Police Invocation, and led by Officer Dory Odd for the Cobb County Police Department, to lead us in our Pledge of Allegiance. So those who are willing and able, please stand.
Good morning. Please join me in prayer. Oh God, you are great and greatly to be praised. We thank you this day for who you are, that you are the God and maker of all things, including us. We thank you that you are the provider. You're the one that provides the sun and rain in changing seasons. You provide us with our daily bread, O Lord, and we are thankful that it's in you that we live and move and have our being. We pray for this great county of Cobb County. Lord, we thank you for the shoulders upon the men and women upon whom we stand. And Lord, we pray that our best days would yet be ahead. We pray for our councilmen and women this day. Lord, we pray that you would give them insight and discernment to lead, and that they would do so as servants. Lord, we pray for our first responders, for 9/11 or 911 and fire and police. We pray that you would protect them and watch over them. Pray for our city workers this day, Lord. Thankful for them that make this county functional and beautiful, a wonderful place for which we can live. Lord, we're thankful this day for our businesses, for those that are existing and new and those that are yet to come. Lord, we are thankful for the service that they provide to our county and the employment. Lord, we pray for our churches and our community centers and other ministries around this county and in the cities, Lord, as they minister to spiritual needs, being reminded that we are both body and soul. God, you are good. We are thankful for your benevolence. We're thankful for your kindness. Lord, we pray that we would rise up and bless your name this day with thankfulness and gratitude in our hearts. For we pray this in the name of Jesus Christ, our Savior. Amen.
Amen.
Please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Okay, John, I believe it's all yours.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Today's hearing will be conducted with the following process and procedure. Each case will be called in numerical order. When each case is called, the applicant is requested to stand and signify they are in attendance. Then we're going to call for any opposition who may be here so they can be counted for the official record. After the counting of the opposition, the applicant and any opposition will be asked to come forward to be sworn in so they can present testimony to the Board of Commissioners. The applicant will testify first, and then the opposition, if any, will testify second. It's important to note that each side only gets 10 minutes to state their case or concerns. There's not a process to reserve your time, and there's not a rebuttal process. So convey all your information to the board within your 10-minute time period. Additionally, if more than one person wishes to speak on an issue, you might want to coordinate with each other about what you're going to talk about, because each side only gets 10 minutes, and you don't want to cover the same information twice. After both sides have had their 10-minute presentation period, the board will start to discuss the case at hand. From the discussion, they may ask one or more speakers to come back to the front for questions or comments. After that, the board will make a decision to either approve, deny, hold, or continue the case at hand. Today's printed agenda contains a number of withdrawn cases that will not be heard today. First case is rezoning case Z64 of 2018, Northside Hospital, Inc. by Denton's U.S. LLP. That case has been withdrawn without prejudice, will not be heard today. So Z64 of 2018 will not be heard. Rezoning case Z76 of 2018, Mohammed Vasai. This case has been withdrawn without prejudice by staff. So rezoning case Z76 of 2018 will not be heard today. Rezoning case Z81 of 2018, Wesley C. Staggs. This case was withdrawn without prejudice by staff, so Z81 of 2018 will not be heard today. Rezoning case Z83 of 2018, Blake Wilder Strategies, LLC. This case was withdrawn without prejudice by staff, so Z83 of 2018 will not be heard today. Rezoning case Z1 of 2019, Margarita Zazuda and Mark Vizcarra. This case was withdrawn without prejudice by staff, will not be heard. So Z1 of 2019 will not be heard today. Rezoning case Z17 of 2019, H&I Real Estate, Inc. That case was withdrawn with prejudice by the Planning Commission, so Z17 will not be heard today. Other business number 71 of 2018, Mount Bethel Christian Academy. This case was withdrawn without prejudice, will not be heard. So other business number 71 of 2018 will not be heard today. Other business number 9 of 2019, Monica James, CDS Development. This case has been withdrawn without prejudice. It will not be heard. So other business number 9 of 2019 will not be heard today. And other business number 12 of 2019, Charles Hans Poss Jr. This case has been withdrawn without prejudice and will not be heard. So other business number 12 of 2019 will not be heard today. Mr. Chairman and Board, we did get a request to withdraw one more case, and the applicant is present. Other business number 40 of 2018, John and Mona Lloyd. The applicant has asked this case be withdrawn without prejudice, Mr. Chairman and Board.
Other business number 40?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I believe that's, Commissioner Roth's gonna, because Commissioner Gamble's recused herself from that, so Commissioner Roth's gonna handle that case.
Yes, sir. I make a motion to allow OB 40 to be withdrawn without prejudice.
I have a second. Any discussion? Call the question. Passes 4-0 with Commissioner Gamble recused.
Thank you. There are a number of cases on today's printed agenda which have been continued either by the Planning Commission or staff, will not be heard today. First case is rezoning case Z37 of 2018, Winchester Parkway LLC. This case was continued by the staff until the April 2nd, 2019 Planning Commission zoning hearing. So Z37 of 2018 will not be heard today. Rezoning case Z70 of 2018, the Washman Group LLC. This case was continued by the staff until the April 16th, 2019 Board of Commissioners zoning hearing. So Z70 of 2018 will not be heard today. Rezoning case Z71 of 2018, Pope and Land Enterprises Incorporated. This case was continued by the staff until the April 2nd, 2019 Planning Commission zoning hearing. So Z71 of 2018 will not be heard today. Rezoning case Z77 of 2018, Ackworth Baker Grove LLC. This case was continued by the staff until the April 2nd, 2019 Planning Commission zoning hearing. So Z77 of 2018 will not be heard today. Rezoning case Z80 of 2018, Embry Development Company LLC. This case was held by the Planning Commission until the April 2nd, 2019 Planning Commission zoning hearing. So Z80 of 2018 will not be heard today. Rezoning case Z82 of 2018, IGBO Union Atlanta. This case was held by the Planning Commission until the April 2nd, 2019 Planning Commission zoning hearing. So Z82 of 2018 will not be heard today. Rezoning case Z5 of 2019, Summerlin Homes. This case was continued by staff until the April 2nd, 2019 Planning Commission zoning hearing. So Z5 of 2019 will not be heard today. Rezoning case Z8 of 2019, Carl Streck. This case was continued by the Planning Commission until the April 2nd, 2019 Planning Commission zoning hearing. So Z8 of 2019 will not be heard today. Rezoning case Z9 of 2019, Blake Properties Incorporated. This case was continued by the staff until the April 2nd, 2019 Planning Commission zoning hearing. So Z9 of 2019 will not be heard today. Rezoning case Z11 of 2019, Family Life Restoration Center Incorporated. This case was continued by the Planning Commission until the April 2nd, 2019 Planning Commission zoning hearing. So Z11 of 2019 will not be heard today. Rezoning case Z12 of 2019, Fatima Goodman, Codges 401k Trust. This case was continued by the staff until the April 2nd, 2019 Planning Commission zoning hearing. So Z12 of 2019 will not be heard today. Rezoning case Z13 of 2019, Amber Shea LLC. This case was continued by the staff until the April 2nd, 2019 Planning Commission zoning hearing. So Z13 of 2019 will not be heard today. Special Land Use Permit number 4 of 2019, A1 Auto Cores LLC. This case was continued by the staff until the April 2nd, 2019 Planning Commission zoning hearing. So SLUP 4 of 2019 will not be heard today. And finally, other business number 13 of 2019, Castlegate Property Group. That case was continued by the staff until the April 16th, 2019 Board of Commissioners zoning hearing. So other business number 13 of 2019 will not be heard today. I would like to ask people in today's audience, if you have a cell phone, please turn the volume on mute. The ringing of cell phones does interfere with the broadcast and presentations. Any person wishing to speak before the Board of Commissioners must file a campaign contribution disclosure statement. If within the 2 years immediately preceding the filing of a rezoning application, a campaign contribution totaling $250 or more was made to a current member of the Board of Commissioners. Additional information about this is located on the table at the back of the room. And lastly, I want to remind applicants, opposition, or any interested party that information is due to this board the Wednesday prior to this hearing. Any information submitted after the Wednesday due date may or may not be considered by this board at their discretion. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'm ready to start the consent agenda.
Please.
Cobb County Board of Commissioners zoning hearing consent agenda for March 19, 2019. Rezoning case Z61 of 2018, EMAE LLC, request rezoning from RA5 to RA5 for the purpose of a single-family attached subdivision in land lots 384 and 385 of the 18th District. The property is located on the west side of Factory Shaw's Road, north of South Gordon Road. The Planning Commission recommends approval to the RA5 zoning district, subject to the following conditions. Site plan received by the zoning division on February 14, 2019, with the following changes. Open space to be made a part of Lot 9, either an easement on Lot 9 or open space to be added for a mailbox kiosk and entrance sign. Entrance sign should be a small size. Applicant to submit a revised site plan at least 5 days prior to the March 19, 2019 Board of Commissioners zoning hearing, and that was done on March 14, 2019. Letter of agreeable conditions from Mr. Carlos Arenas dated February 27, 2019. Not otherwise in conflict with the following changes. A, item number 1, delete in its entirety. B, number 2, delete in its entirety. Maximum of 9 lots. Streets are to be public. If the detention pond requires fencing, the fencing to be black vinyl coated chain link with landscaping to provide screening. The county arborist to approve all landscaping. Applicant to create a mandatory homeowners association and to record a declaration of covenants, conditions, and restrictions, which shall contain covenants, conditions, and restrictions for the subdivision. The HOA should be responsible for the enforcement of the CC&R. All homes have a minimum of 1,600 square feet of heated and cooled finished living area. All homes should be traditional in style and architecture and shall be a maximum of 2 stories in height. The exterior shall be brick, stone, stacked stone, cement-based shingles, cement-based board and batten, cement-based siding, or a combination thereof. The front facade shall have at least 50% brick, stone, or stacked stone. All homes shall be similar in look, feel, and architecture to the elevations received by the zoning division on March 4, 2019, with the understanding that 1-story or 1.5-story homes are allowed. All homes to be a minimum of 35 feet in width, not including wraparound porches. Applicant to provide all elevations as part of the revised stipulation letter at least 5 days prior to the March 19, 2019 Board of Commissioners zoning hearing. All homes to have a minimum of a 2-car garage. Garages are not to be converted to living space. All garages to be used primarily for the parking of vehicles with only incidental storage that does not interfere with the parking of vehicles. This restriction to be included in the CC&R. There should be a maximum of 2 homes rented at any one time in the subdivision. This restriction to be included in the CC&R. The district commissioner may approve a setback variance up to 10 feet on Lot 9, if necessary, based on home layout. All utilities servicing subdivision shall be located underground. All construction and employee vehicles and equipment shall be parked and otherwise located on the subject property. At no time shall vehicles be parked on any public street, including but not limited to Factory Shaw's Road. Sidewalks shall be provided on both sides of the street as shown on the site plan. The district commissioner may approve minor modifications except for those that A, increase the density, B, cause a reduction in the size of an approved buffer, C, change that is in conflict with an express condition or stipulation of zoning, D, require a variance or violates Cobb County ordinance except as provided in the above stipulations. And staff comments and recommendations not otherwise in conflict. Is the applicant present? Let the record show the applicant is here. Is there anyone here opposed to rezoning case Z61 of 2018? Let the record show there's no one opposed.
Commissioner Cubit has a comment.
Yes, John, I'd like to add District Commissioner to have final approval of landscaping and building architecture.
Okay, got it.
Thank you.
Rezone case Z14 of 2019, DDR Southeast Sandy Plains LLC, request rezoning from NRC to CRC for the purpose of retail, restaurants, offices, movie theater, and commercial indoor recreation in land lots 107, 108, 109, and 110 of the 16th district. The property is located on the southwesterly side of Woodstock Road, on the westerly side of Mabry Road, and on the south side of Sandy Plains Road. The Planning Commission recommends deletion of Z14 to the NRC zoning district, subject to the following conditions. There shall be a permitted use and size-specific variance for an indoor recreation facility operated by Ignite Adventure Park, occupying approximately 67,000 square feet of the existing Sandy Plains Village Shopping Center. The use shall be limited to that expressed in the statement of intent attached to the stipulation letter from Mr. Garvis L. Sams Jr., dated February 13, 2019. As modified by this motion. The previous use-specific variance from zoning for case Z7 of 2012, granted for movie theater, at the subject property shall remain unchanged. Go-karts, bumper cars, or any other conveyance used for recreational purposes within the indoor recreation facility will be battery or electric powered, and there will be no gasoline fueled engines allowed. The stipulations, conditions of a zoning, which are part of the previous zoning case, Z7 2012, pertaining to the subject property shall remain in full force and effect unless set aside or modified in this motion. Dumpster enclosures in compliance with the Cobb County ordinances are to be provided at all dumpsters on the subject property as a condition of obtaining a certificate of occupancy for the indoor recreation facility. This provision supersedes stipulation number 11 from the rezoning case Z7 of 2012, as modified in the Board of Commissioners zoning hearing minutes from March 20th, 2012. Letter of agreeable conditions from Mr. Garvis L. Sams Jr., dated February 13, 2019, with the following changes. Item number 1, revised to read: the stipulations and conditions set forth herein are in addition to the stipulations which are part of the previous zoning case Z7 of 2012. B, item number 2, delete in its entirety. C, item number 7, delete subparagraphs B and C in their entirety, as no variances are required. Number 6, letter of agreeable conditions, Mr. Garvis L. Sams Jr., dated February 26, 2019, with the following changes. A, item number 1, revised to read: the stipulations and conditions set forth herein and those set forth in the February 13, 2019 stipulation letter. And this letter shall control, except to the extent that the stipulations, conditions of zoning, which are part of the previous rezoning case of Z7 of 2012, shall remain in full force and effect. B, item number 2, add to the end, applicant to register these cameras with the Cobb County Police Camera Registration Program. Number 7, construction hours shall be Monday through Friday from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. with no work on Saturday, Sunday, or holidays. 8, operation of the indoor recreation facility to be in full compliance with the Cobb County Code of Ordinances regarding noise and shall be subject to all fines contained within. The applicant is present. Is there anyone here opposed to rezoning case Z14 of 2019? Let the record show there's no one opposed.
Commissioner Otis, some comments, John?
First off, I want to just recognize Lisa Hansen is here from the neighborhood, and I want to also, I think Todd Zinsmaster is here from DDR, and then Planning Commissioner Andy Smith. This started as a very contentious zoning, and through a lot of cooperative work, ended up here on consent. So I just want to thank everybody involved. I have a letter here from Garvis Sams dated March 15th, and it's really just a clarification of some additional stipulations that I wanted to put on, but I have it written for the clerks. Basically, just stipulates that there was a stipulation letter dated February 13th, 2019, an informational letter to Lisa Hansen dated February 20th, and then a supplemental stipulation letter dated February 26th. And that was just because I had received some of those, but not all of those, and so I want to make sure that they're in the record. Also, just we have clarified the construction hours, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Friday. Only indoor work shall be allowed on Saturdays, and no construction work of any type shall be allowed Sundays or holidays. Also, there's a clarification about the trash compactor. If DDR decides to use a trash compactor, the location has to be reviewed and approved by the district commissioner. And then finally, just re-clarification that any go-karts or bumper cars would be electric. And then, and John, I don't know how you want to word this, but the planning commission said use specific. And so we're approving it for this use. However, what I have in this letter is an agreed upon list from the NRC zoning classification of prohibited uses.
I believe the first condition in the planning commission motion just dealt with the old Walmart space that was 67,000 square feet.
Right.
The rest of the shopping center could be anything that's allowed under NRC. That's in
Right,
that list
and
right
so, well, what DDR would like to do, and so I would like to amend that and list this prohibited uses, and then any change in the uses proposed in this zoning would come back to the district commissioner and notification to the community before being approved by zoning staff.
Okay.
So those are the additions. Yeah, electric and battery is fine for the go-karts and bumper cars.
Okay. Rezoning case Z15 of 2019, Wallace Enterprises Incorporated. Request rezoning from GC to NRC for the purpose of neighborhood retail uses in land lots 763, 764, 821, and 822 of the 17th district. The property is located on the southwesterly side of Log Cabin Road, on the southeasterly side of Brownwood Lane, and on the easterly side of Atlanta Road. The Planning Commission recommends approval to the NRC zoning district, subject to the following conditions. Site plan received by the zoning division on December 6, 2018, with the district commissioner approving minor modifications. Letter of agreeable conditions from Mr. Garvis L. Sams Jr. dated February 21st, 2019. Variances listed in the zoning division comments and recommendations. Atlanta Road design guidelines to be met if the property is ever redeveloped. Steel gates to be added to the dumpster enclosures. Fire department comments and recommendations. Water and sewer division comments and recommendations. Stormwater management division comments and recommendations. And Department of Transportation comments and recommendations. The applicant is present. Is there anyone here opposed to rezoning case Z15 of 2019?
I don't think so. Either opposed to it or you're not. If you're opposed, we'll put it on the regular agenda. If you're opposed, we'll put it on the regular agenda. Yes or no? Okay, all right, thank you.
And, Mr. Chairman, just before we go on any further, the one other thing that was in that letter that I failed to mention on 14 was that the dumpsters would be enclosed and have rubber lids. That's in the letter, I just forgot to mention it.
The lids have to be electric or battery powered.
No, they're mechanical. Hey, this is a high-tech place.
I know it is, I just, a little light humor here, so apparently it didn't work.
All right, for Z15 of 2019, let the record show there's no one opposed. Rezoning case Z16 of 2019, Tracy Coker requests rezoning from R20 to R15 for the purpose of a residential subdivision in land lots 520 and 489 of the 16th district. The property is located on the west side of Shaw Road at Wood Rush Drive. The Planning Commission recommends approval to the R15 zoning district, subject to the following conditions. Letters of agreeable conditions from Mr. Garvis L. Sams Jr. dated February 21st, 2019, and February 27th, 2019, with the attached revised site plan, conceptual drawings of farmhouse-style homes, staff comments and recommendations. The applicant is present. Is there anyone here opposed to rezoning case Z16 of 2019? Let the record show there's no one opposed.
Sure, absolutely.
Thank you. I just wanted to say thank you to the neighbors that came out to the community meeting and for the applicant and Mr. Sams working with us and our suggestions and making this a really nice project. Thank you.
Rezoning case Z18 of 2019, Lloyd Development Services, request rezoning from O&I to R15 for the purpose of a single-family residential use in land lots 493 and 494 of the 16th district. The property is located on the south end of Hilltop Drive, north of Chance Drive. The Planning Commission recommends approval to the R15 zoning district, subject to the following conditions. Site plan received by the zoning division on December 6, 2018, with the district commissioner approving minor modifications. Letter from Ms. Carol Brown dated February 21st, 2019. Fire Department comments and recommendations. Water and Sewer Division comments and recommendations. Stormwater Management Division comments and recommendations. And Department of Transportation comments and recommendations. The applicant's representative is present. Is there anyone here opposed to rezoning case Z18 of 2019? Let the record show there's no one opposed. Rezoning case Z19 of 2019, Lloyd Development Services, request rezoning from from R20 to GC for the purpose of general retail uses for assemblage in land lot 422 of the 16th district. The property is located on the northeast side of New Chastain Road, west of Canton Road. The Planning Commission recommends approval to the GC zoning district, subject to the following conditions. Parcel to be assembled with one of the contiguous properties meeting the general commercial zoning requirements in order to be utilized. No access to Chastain Road, and Department of Transportation comments and recommendations. The applicant's representative is present. Is there anyone here opposed to rezoning case Z19 of 2019? Let the record show there's no one opposed. And moving into land use permits on the consent agenda, LUP 5 of 2019, West Cobb Office Investors LLC, request a land use permit renewal for the purpose of an office and dance studio in land lot 241 of the 20th district. Property is located on the west side of Kennesaw Due West Road, south of Stylesboro Road. The Planning Commission recommends approval for 24 months, subject to the following conditions. If the dance studio use is discontinued, then the land use permit ceases. For this applicant only, Fire Department comments and recommendations, site plan review comments and recommendations, and Department of Transportation comments and recommendations. Is the applicant present? Let the record show the applicant is here. Is there anyone here opposed to land use permit number 5 of 2019?
Commissioner Gamber has a question.
John, in your comments, you said for 24 months. Is it 24 or 12?
It's 12 is what the planning commission recommended.
Okay, I believe
Staff
you
may have
s-
been 12, but the planning commission gave them an extra 24 months since this was a renewal.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Okay, land use permit number 6 of 2019, Devereaux Foundation, request a land use permit for the purpose of a foster care administrative office in land lot 621 of the 19th district. The property is located on the southeastern intersection of Powder Springs Road and Tiffany Drive. The Planning Commission recommends approval for 12 months, subject to the following conditions. Applicant to close and remove the driveway off Powder Springs Road. Applicant to install a new driveway that is to be a minimum of 20 feet wide off Tiffany Drive. Entry of driveway off Tiffany Road to be acceptable to Cobb County DOT. Driveway to be landscaped to look as residential as possible. Maximum sign size to be 2 feet by 4 feet to be attached to the building. Maximum of 6 vehicles be parked on the property at any given time. At no time shall there be any parking on the right-of-way. Staff comments and recommendations, and Department of Transportation comments and recommendations not otherwise in conflict. Is the applicant present? Let the record show the applicant is here. Is there anyone here opposed to land use permit number 6? Let the record show there's no one opposed.
Yes, may the applicant please approach Phillip 6? Good morning.
Good morning.
Yes, I wanted to talk through the driveway condition. I noticed, the Planning Commission did recommend closing the driveway off Powder Springs Road. I noticed that it was not a recommendation of DOT, but they did ask you to widen it to certain standards. Are you comfortable with the condition that's been read as today to create the new driveway? Or did you desire to continue to have access off of Powder Springs Road?
No, we actually met with Ashley White with DOT. She met with us on the property, and we're in
Okay.
agreement. It's much safer to close that entrance to the property and enter off the other drive, so that's fine.
Okay, very good. I'm glad you met with Ashley.
Yes.
Thank you. I'm fine.
Thank you, ma'am. Good luck.
Okay, moving into special land use permits on the consent agenda. SLEP 1 of 2019, Prime Tower Development LLC, request a special land use permit for the purpose of a 180-foot wireless telecommunications tower and facility in land lot 922 of the 19th District. The property is located on the east side of Brookwood Drive and on the north side of the east-west connector. The Planning Commission recommends approval, subject to the following conditions. Site plan received by the zoning division on February 13, 2019, with the district commissioner approving minor modifications. Consultant reports from Cityscape dated January 23, 2019, and February 21st, 2019. Tower to be a monopole type. Tower to be constructed for a minimum of 3 users. Tower height to be a maximum of 120 feet. Landscaping to be approved by county arborist at plan review. And applicant to provide a certified structure design prior to permitting. Is the applicant present? Let the record show the applicant is here. Is there anyone here opposed to special land use permit number 1 of 2019? Let the record show there's no one opposed. And moving into other business items on consent. Other business item number 11 of 2019 is to consider a site plan amendment for Waldron and Lee Dentistry LLC regarding rezoning case Z149 of 1998. The property is located on the north side of Roswell Road, west of East Piedmont Road, in land lot 986 of the 16th District. Staff recommends approval, subject to site plan contained in the other business packet, marked Exhibit 1, with the District Commissioner approving minor modifications. Cobb DOT comments contained in the other business item, stormwater management comments contained in the other business item, and all previous stipulations not in conflict with this amendment to remain in effect. Is the applicant present? Let the record show the applicant is here. Is there anyone here opposed to other business item number 11 of 2019? Let the record show there's no one opposed.
Hey, John, do we need to mention that the pavilion will be under the slope, like you and I talked?
Pardon me?
Isn't this the one where we talked about the pavilion?
There is a pavilion on the adjacent YMCA property.
Right, which
that
we're
they
going to
wanna
hear
move.
separately next month. Is that not true?
It's got to be a separate item, and I'm not sure if it was submitted for next month. It may be the month after that.
Well, okay, but I just wanted to let the other commissioners know that even though it's depicted on the site plan, it's going to be considered separately.
That's correct.
Yeah.
It's a separate zoning
Right.
case.
That's all, I just want to let them know.
Special land use permit case is what it is. Other business item number 14 of 2019 is to consider a stipulation amendment from Mr. Dan Marinko and Tom Payton regarding case number 163 of 1986. The property is located on the east side of Sherwood Lane, on the south side of Pepper Mill Road, and on the west side of Johnson Ferry Road in land lots 73 and 81 of the First District. Staff recommends approval, subject to the following conditions. Proposed sign rendering contained in the other business packet with the district commissioner approving any changes. Cobb DOT comments contained in the other business item with the district commissioner approving the final sign location. And all previous stipulations not in conflict with this amendment to remain in effect. Is the applicant present? Let the record show the applicant is here. Is there anyone here opposed to other business item number 14 of 2019? Let the record show there's no one opposed, and that completes the consent agenda, Mr. Chairman and Board.
In that case, I make a motion to approve the consent agenda as revised. Second, any discussion? Call a question. Passes 5-0.
Okay, all those folks that are on consent agenda, your business is done. You're free to leave. Okay, moving into the continued or held case agenda. First case is rezoning case Z78 of 2018. David Hammondtree requests rezoning from RA5 to RA5 for the purpose of attached single-family residential in land lot 202 of the 17th District. The property is located on the east side of Sandtown Road, south of Windy Hill Road. Is the applicant present? Let the record show the applicant is here. Is there anyone here opposed to rezoning case Z78 of 2018? Let the record show there's 2 people opposed. All those wishing to address the board, please come forward to be sworn in.
Good, John.
Morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. This is Z78. It's a property located on, close to the corner of Sandtown Road and Windy Hill Road. I've prepared some documents for y'all to look at. To start explaining the site property, initially, this property was 2 parcels of land, one zoned neighborhood shopping. The other parcel was RM12. And under Z68 of 2005, they combined those 2 properties that were zoned NS and RM12 into one property that was for a site-specific plan zoned RA5 for the development of 5 single-family houses. And the problem with this development, well, there are a few problems, but it was never developed because the 5 houses that were slated to be developed, 4 out of the 5 were located in the floodplain. And I went to Cobb County Water System yesterday and asked to look at the flood maps of 2005. And what I discovered was that there had not been a FEMA floodplain map for that. And this was one of the contingencies upon the approval of Z65, which was approved by the Board of Commissioners then. But there was not a FEMA map that had shown the floodplain. And for whatever reason, this development had never proceeded and gone through to be developed. Later in 2014, under Z40, 2014, someone, Sheila Bynum, proposed to put a church at this site. And that was roundly rejected. I was told close to 80 people showed up at this this hearing for Z40 2014 to oppose that. Now, I purchased the property with the intention to develop it. Being naive to this whole process and not being a developer, I thought that it would be zoned RA5 and that I could go ahead through with whatever is approved under the code of RA5. And I've learned this has been a trial by fire. Everything I've done, I'm feeling my way through, and I'm not a builder. I'm not a so I was not familiar with the process. So I did try to educate myself as much as possible. I downloaded the entire copy of Cobb County Standards and Development, and I would just like to note that I had requested under Cobb County Standards and Development under 102.02 a pre-application conference. And I would like to read 102.02. It says, for the one-stop development process provides the development community the opportunity to meet with representatives from each agent, department, division prior to the production of construction documents in order to obtain data critical to the design of the project. And that would have been ideal for me. And the reason, when I asked for a pre-application conference, I was told that was rejected. Roundly said, we don't provide pre-application conferences. My opinion on why that was denied is, I don't think that many people walk into planning and development asking for a pre-application conference because they're seasoned developers and know how the system works. And me being green to this project and being denied to that, I was very well received as far as directed to any person. And I've talked to people in each department, in watershed management, construction, zoning. I've met many people, and they all have individually answered my questions, but as a whole, I've been kind of feeling as I go. But specifically about this property, it's located near the corner of Windy Hill on Sandtown Road, and it's in a neighborhood activity center, which, reading from Cobb 2040, A Vision for a New Era, it says the purpose of a NAC category is to provide areas that serve neighborhood residents and businesses. Typical uses include small offices limited to retail and grocery store. Allowable zonings, SC, LRO, LRC, OS, NRC, PVC, UVC, and RSL. So those are the zoning categories that are permitted in this district. And RA5 is not one of those categories. My intent was to travel the path of least resistance, and if I figured if the commission had once voted for a RA5 development, then that's what I would apply for. And so that's what I'm proposing to be built at this site, is a quadruplex that is in the first line of RA5 development is for the use of single-family homes, duplexes, triplexes, and quadruplexes. Currently, there's 36,000 square feet on this site that is not in the floodplain, and approximately 54,000 feet that is in a floodplain. The site that was in S is completely 100% out of the floodplain, and that's where I would like to develop, up close to the street on that NS with a footprint approximately 60 feet by 30 feet, which would be a footprint of 1,800 square feet. And I would like to build 3 units at street level and 1 unit at the basement. So I understand that this the RA5 is not something that the neighborhood activity center is a permitted zoning, but because it's already zoned RA5, I'm not asking to go to a different zoning. I want to keep that same zoning, and it's zoned now for 5 units, 5 single-family homes, and as density is calculated through the use of not using floodplains or wetlands, it is the density calculation as for a 4-unit quadruplex would be 4.8 units per the acre. I'm asking for 4. You can see that the neighbors have that are next to it is a 14-unit apartment complex, which would be undeveloped. They'd have green space behind them. It would retain a lot of the green space. Currently, there's a homeless encampment on the property, and my vision is to have a small footprint and to have a very small number of units on the property. As opposed to a commercial development. I know that if this were to be denied, the permitted uses would be a commercial development, and the community has strongly opposed the commercial developments that are allowed within this area. Therefore, I think that consideration should be given to the fact that it is approved for 5 single-family houses, and I'm asking to have a less dense project, as well as a more palatable building, unless a smaller impact on that. And I also want to make note of the fact that this project is near and dear to me, both in two ways, because I own this property, whether this project is approved, if this isn't acceptable, I'm willing to make amends to whatever the county would want. And I want to note that I live 3/10 of a mile from here. So
I'm sorry,
this
Mr.
is something
Hammondtree? Mr. Hammondtree?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, your 10 minutes are up.
Okay. Okay.
Those in opposition? I'm sorry?
May I have a pointer? Yes. Yeah. So if I touch that, will it point? You tell me where this house, right? Okay. This house was originally Sarah Dorse's house.
Okay, you need to come up to the podium, let us know who you are.
That house was
You let
originally
us need to
Sarah
know who you are,
Dorse's.
sir.
Mr. David M. Shapiro.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Attorney number 35195, as per the clerk's office of the Superior Court
Okay,
of
now
Cobb
do you want
County.
something up on the screen first to help you with your case?
We can point.
Okay?
So this one there
All right.
was Sarah, this one here was Sarah Dorse's home, and Sarah Dorse was related to all the builders that built this area. Her husband was a builder, Herschel Dorse. The next house, next to it here, that was the second house that he built for her after he started building H.G. Dorse subdivision. And there are 3 homes right here. One's been burnt down that were built by Mr. Dorse years ago too. But now H.G. Dorse goes all the way up and all the way down to about here on Windy Hill Road, on both sides here. And it is a very nice neighborhood. So if you don't do something nice for H.G. Dorse subdivision, they're going to scream bloody murder. They have nice homes. Anyway, my proposal because of the controversy over this property. This property has always been a non-conforming piece of property that changes hand from hand to hand and causes nothing but grief for the people that live in the area in having to come to meetings to try and get it built on. Now, my suggestion would be, knowing that he has a parking deck, that he's going to build, why can't they put a retaining wall in, make the parking deck the full pad area and the house area, and then put 2 1,800 square foot units on the first floor up from there, 2 above that, and 1 on the top for a penthouse, which gives him the density that we promised the previous owner during negotiations years ago. It is either 2.37 or 2.1. It varies between different plats. We have the do not disturb along the Nickajack tributary, possibly alignment with Dorse Drive, possibly even a front garage door with a water catch that would take it down to a retention pond so that they can go straight in from the front and park underneath their buildings. So you're talking about a 3,600 quadplex is what he's requesting, which boils down to 900 square foot per unit, and that's very small. That worries people. So this is 2.11 acres of non-conforming property. And if he was allowed to build, I would immediately request that one of the new daylight lead lights go up at the Dorse intersection so that there's plenty of light for the construction and to prevent pilferage. The density was 2.37 units per acre on Z65 of 2005. The footprint will be smaller, actually, if you can do something like this, even if it requires driving pilings to keep the building up and allow parking underneath. Water retention pond is not indicated on the newer plan, but if you're going to go to 5 units again, which the previous owner was promised in negotiation with the neighborhoods, 5 units were approved, and I suggest a penthouse for the 5th. 1, 2, parking level, 1, 2, 3, 4, penthouse on top. And something that looks nice because you're right slab in the middle of Dorse Drive coming out on Sandtown Road. And those people deserve something for their expensive homes. Will the units appraise at 1,800 square foot per unit, possibly 250 to 350? I don't know. That's your part. Bottom level parking, no parking on street. In other words, we'd need a stipulation to amend this to where it's a doable deal for the man. We want it built just as bad as he does, but we don't want a liquor store. This is what started years ago. Mr. Harrison bought the middle home on that strip on Sandtown Road, the 3 that Mr. Dorse built. And immediately after he bought it, 7-Eleven went up, and Mr. Harrison had children. And he said, Mr. Dorse, can I trade this in for a house on Stallcup Drive? I don't want my kids shot during a robbery at a 7-Eleven. Anyway, no drug rehab, medical, or any other treatment facility, nor in addition, any commercial or storage facility shall be run, and if discovered, shall invalidate the occupancy permit until the residents of the area shall have discussed and voted on how to proceed. We're trying to be fair. There's a lot of controversy about this piece of property. And I'm not pointing fingers here. I'm just trying to resolve people's issues that they're scared.
Mr. Shapiro, in the interest of time, would you yield the floor to the other person who has a comment?
I only had one more item, if
Okay.
I could slide it in quick. Where was that? In other words, this is at the intersection of Dorse Drive and Sandtown Road, and Dorse Drive is probably the nicest subdivision, older subdivision in the area. Sandtown Estates is a newer one, which is not too far away, and will be adjoining this property. All
right, sir.
That's my input.
All right, thank you very much.
I'm not opposed to it being built, but I would like to, I used to live on Dorse Drive.
Okay. All right, we've heard you. Thank you very much, sir. The second member, please. You have a couple minutes. Right here, sir.
Good morning,
Good
y'all.
morning. Just let us know who you are, please.
My name's David Moore. I live right across the street from the property. I've lived there for 60 years, since 1958. the property in question. I don't care if the man builds a single-family home, but all this quadruplex, parking deck, you've got very little road frontage, you've got Doris Drive coming down that dead ends nearly in front of the property. I think you've got 80 foot of frontage there. You've got 80 foot of frontage there. You know, if the man wants to build a nice house there, I don't care. But all this quadruplex, parking deck, retaining walls, I've stomped in woods all my life. All you've got is a bunch of swamp down there below him, which I guess is what they consider the floodplain. Mr. Doris did, he built the house that I live in. I was brought home from the hospital too in 1958. I don't mind the man building a nice house there as long as he keeps it nice, and there's not a bunch of this quadruplex is what concerns me. You know, you've got 4 or 5 families living in one building or whatever. I don't care. But if the man wants to build a house, let him build a nice house, just like there is in the neighborhood and has been for the last 60 years, and leave it at that. You know, the man spent his money on some property. If he wants to build a nice single-family home there, so be it, but I'm definitely opposed to the quadruplex, parking deck, and all that
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
stuff.
Okay, Mr. Shapiro, you have 30 seconds.
Might I inject that this is a piece of non-conforming property?
You
People on Doris Drive do not want a liquor store there.
Okay.
It's a possibility to.
All right. You did make the point about it being non-conforming. We heard that. Yes, sir. Thank you. Okay, Commissioner Cupid.
Thank you, Chairman. And as was discussed at our last hearing, this is a challenging piece of property. You can see from its size and also from its topography, it does dip down towards the back, and there is a significant amount of wetlands that's on the property. The future land use map of this property does call for this to be built as a neighborhood activity center, which could facilitate neighborhood retail, commercial, or even low-rise office. In speaking with the applicant, and in you hearing him today, he is looking to develop this site. And he's trying to do it in a way that's going to be as least intrusive to the surrounding area as possible, while certainly maximizing his investment that's there on the property. For it to be less intense, I think that going residential is the way to go. And it does comport with what was encouraged by the neighboring residents, is to see a residential property there. So I'm inclined to stick with the original zoning as opposed to moving in the direction of the future land use map. And looking at the map that's on the screen, you'll see that it's surrounded by net property. There's also a high-density residential property that is north of the property that comes off of Windy Hill. So again, I am in support of maintaining a residential property on this site. So now we're just looking at what does that look like. For there to be residential on the site, well, we could look at the history of it. The site was originally zoned for RA5, which is the current zoning, but the current zoning calls for 5 single-family homes. I don't know why 5 single-family homes were accommodated here, because the way that it was drawn, those homes were in the floodplain, which requires a development to move to the west as opposed to being developed throughout the property. Staff does note that there is 1.244 acres of floodplain that's on the site. However, the site is 2.078 acres. So the number of units that could be allowed per the net density is at 4.8. So at RA5, they're just under the amount of homes, which is 5 homes per acre, which could be allotted. The applicant is seeking 4 homes on this site, but as opposed to them being single-family homes where they're apart and, again, will be a challenge for them to fit on this site, he's asking for 4 units. If you look at the RA5 description within our ordinance, it does permit a duplex, it does permit a triplex, and it does permit a quadruplex. I've never seen that in zoning, but sure enough, when the applicant showed me the language, there it was. So again, in him trying to maximize his investment on the property, he shared that that was his interest. And in looking at community development's analysis, it provides that even with that development, there would be no variances. So it could be permitted at the dimensions that the applicant did forward. There are some challenges, as was shared by the second speaker, is just looking at the amount of square footage which would be permitted per home. So even though we're coming down in density from a commercial standard, we are still looking at a more dense development than the single-family homes, which are on the opposite side of Sandtown that go towards Doris. So I would like to actually speak to the applicant, if you don't mind coming up, David, and talk through that with you. Yes. Is there consideration for, instead of going towards the quadruplex and increasing the square footage and dropping down the number of actual units on the site? Could you go, I mean, at 4, you are permitted, then 4 at 900. Could you come down and do 1,200 at 3?
I could.
You could. Would you be amenable to that?
I would be.
Okay. Would you be amenable to 2? I'm just asking, or is 3?
I would
I should have
rather
started
have
with
3.
2. With 3?
3 units.
Okay.
And increase the.
Okay, I think that's something I could support.
Okay.
And it's not the single-family character, but again, considering the amount of acreage that the applicant does have and his ability to even develop beyond, to develop beyond 3 to go towards 4, you know, I just want to be reasonable towards what he's permitted. And again, looking at the future land use map, it would not have been unreasonable for him to come in and ask for a commercial property, which would have just added the amount of intensity that's on Sandtown Road today. So I'm amenable to this application, but I would like to go down to 3 units today.
I would be fine with that.
Okay, very good. And what we'll do is, and there are also comments about a parking deck to be built. It's my understanding that you are building a larger parking area, but not necessarily a parking deck for the residents there.
I had not considered building a parking deck.
Oh, okay. And residents requested that there's an alignment with Doris Drive. I see Doris Drive just comes right towards the south boundary of your property, but in your site plan, which is, unfortunately, it's very light, you do have that driveway coming, so there's somewhat of an alignment towards Doris Drive, towards the top northern end of it. Would that be your, would you maintain the site plan as is, so that driveway is coming in somewhat of an alignment towards Doris Drive?
I think that would be the best plan to go forward with, as well as DOT has looked at it and approved it, and that's the curb cut that has been provided by the county.
Okay, very good. All right, thank you, David. I'm
Thank
prepared
you.
to make a motion. With that, I move that we approve Z78 from RA5 single-family residential to RA5 attached single-family residential with a maximum of 3 units, with the building architecture, landscape, and also parking and lighting plan to be approved by the district commissioner. All other staff comments and recommendations to be otherwise maintained, not otherwise in conflict.
We have a second. Any discussion?
First off, David, I have to say that from our conversation yesterday to your presentation today, you did a lot of research. So I appreciate you making the effort to do that. In looking at this and in talking to Dave Braden, I'm not really sure how it ever got zoned RA5 in the first place.
Yes, exactly. Right.
Especially with the
Never
site.
been
Yeah, David, why don't you come up? Because we talked about this yesterday. It should have never happened because floodplain hasn't changed from back then too much. So let's talk about what we talked about yesterday.
And Dave Braden with Stormwater Management Division. Yeah, I was able to pull, I was not doing zoning analysis back then. It was Henry Mingledorf, if everybody would remember. But I was able to find his, I was able to find his notes, and he did a good job. But I'm not sure why, because the site plan in there had 5 units with the
In the
lots and the
floodplain.
units all the way down in the floodplain. But let me read Henry's comments. It says the layout, let's see, identification of the flood hazard as required by the developer is critical to determination of the development of this tract. In the absence of being presented here, stormwater management must reserve the right to review and ability to require plan changes once the floodplain mapping is determined, which would be done during plan review. So in, I think, when was it, '05? It was '05 that came through, is that right, Bob?
Right.
Yeah, I think that's what we determined yesterday.
Yeah. In '05, the flood study that was in effect was the 1992 study, and this stream was not, had not been mapped at that point in time. Subsequent to '05, the county's floodplain mapping in '08 was expanded to much larger area. But Henry was wise enough to see the drainage area and the shape of the floodplain here. It was obviously floodplain. And
Right,
made
there wasn't much that
and
got
made that
past that,
comment.
right?
So now that we know, obviously this floodplain would have been identified at that point in time, and Henry actually suggested that it be done. I think he made the statement in his comments. I think it's on the next page here. Suggest delineation of flood hazard be done prior to rezoning. So not sure why that didn't happen, but it did. But
Okay,
it's- yeah.
all right, thanks. So, to the opposition, what does all that mean? That means that when the commissioners said that 5 units per the acre was okay, Stormwater said that it may be okay, but it's gonna have to take into account the floodplain. So, the zoning, as Commissioner Cupid pointed out, RA5 is the maximum number that's allowed. It can be any number from 1 to 5. And David, you and I talked about that yesterday. And so, the piece of property was bought with the understanding that it was zoned RA5 and that 5 units were approved. You know, and subsequent, since then, what the applicant has found out is that you can't build 5, which is what Mr. Mingendorf pretty much said in his comments. So, I mean, the fact of the matter is that the property was bought with 5 units being approved. I think it's reasonable just to reduce it to 3. In acknowledgement of the fact that there's a lot of floodplain. I do think that, and I'm going to leave this, as Commissioner Cupid's area. I think that some repositioning, instead of having the property horizontally parallel to the road, the 3 units, I think that it could be repositioned to maybe be the perpendicular to the road and be less intrusive to the neighbors coming out of Doris Drive. Or it just, I think it could be made to look like it fits in a little bit better. But I think that the approach of going down to 3 units is the correct one.
Thank you, Bob. And what we can do, so this doesn't have to come back before the board, is just have any modification of site plan come back to the commissioner in case you do decide to reposition the property. You won't have to come through this process again. And also for the resident that's here with the plan and the building architecture coming back, let's circle back around and we can all take a look at it together. So at least in its development, it fits in with the character of the homes that's there.
Okay, further discussion?
So again, just for the clerks, I would just ask for any modification of site plan to come back to the commissioner.
Then I'll call a question. Passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner.
Okay, special land use permit number 13 of 2018, Kennesaw Jewish Center Incorporated. Request a special land use permit for the purpose of a student center for students of the Jewish faith attending Kennesaw State University in land lots 94 and 97 of the 20th district. The property is located on the east side of Friar Lake Road, northwest of Campus Loop Road. The applicant is present. Is there anyone here opposed to SLUP 13 of 2018? Let the record show there's 2 people opposed. All those wishing to address the board, please come forward to be sworn in. Oh, there's 3. Okay, let the record show there's 3 people opposed. 4? One more time. 4 people opposed.
Morning, Kevin.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. For the record, I'm Kevin Moore, here on behalf of the Kennesaw Jewish Center, Inc., in this application for a special land use permit for property located at the intersection of Fry Lake Road and Campus Loop Road. The purpose of this is for a Jewish student center associated with KSU at this location. This proposed student center would be not unlike many other student center or faith-based student centers that you know and are associated with various campuses, including Kennesaw State University, and which includes the Catholic Student Center, which is located just down the street from this location, which is why we believe this particular location was not only very suitable, but very appropriate given its proximity to the KSU campus at this location. And in fact, that was roundly supported by those in the area as well as staff in its analysis given its location and where it is. Also, the proposed student center would be residential in appearance, and we're going to show you that. He's just going to put that up there for you. Would be residential in appearance, and it's a very nice looking, it's an extremely nice looking building that will be residential in appearance to sit on this property, be inviting to not only those of the Jewish faith, but others as they receive that support during their days as students. In addition, I want to go back to the site plan itself and show you a few other of the aspects of this application from a land use plan standpoint. Turning to the property itself, we have Campus Loop Road and Fry Lake Road, and this is that intersection. To give you a sense of the area, you have Campus Loop Road. This area here becomes the main campus for Kennesaw State University. In fact, this property is owned by KSU. The property adjacent on Campus Loop Road, on the north side of Campus Loop Road, is owned by KSU. And this remnant piece there at the intersection is also owned by KSU. And in fact, the Campus Loop Road in this location from this intersection, then heading in a northeasterly direction, Campus Loop Road is actually a private road owned by KSU as well. And I'll come around to that in a minute as that's impacted what we're proposing. What we had originally initially proposed was ensuring that we had adequate, sufficient parking, even though primarily most of the students would arrive either by foot, walking, or by bike. But there also is to ensure that we have some parking on site for students who want to visit and just come by to ensure that we don't have parking on Fry Lake Road or Campus Loop Road. We had proposed an initial access across the KSU property here in this location to access Campus Loop Road, which would be, we felt, far and away the most preferred access point for this property. As this application proceeded through, and you can note in the staff analysis, it was recommended for approval. It came before the Cobb Planning Commission, also recommended approval and had this item on consent. So when this first arrived to you as a Board of Commissioners in December, it was as a consent agenda item. As you can see from this proposal as initially submitted, its location was ideal, its use was ideal, it was positively received by the Pine Tree Civic Association, by area residents due to its proximity to the campus, due to its need, providing a great source and location for students to gather adjacent to the school and for their specific faith-based needs to be met. However, upon the day before your December Board of Commissioners meeting, we received a letter from KSU. We had submitted and met with them about allowing this access at this location. And immediately before your December meeting, we received notification from KSU that they were not going to agree to that. They did not give us a good explanation at the time, but simply said they were not going to agree, which is why it was held at that point in time, and it has been held both again in February, is as we've all tried to have various communications and reach outs, contacts, multiple levels of different types of contacts with those at KSU in order to reach them and have an actual sit down and discussion with them about their potential objections to this location of access here, knowing that we can shift that access point and location to maybe a more desirable place on Campus Loop Road, as well as see what other actual substantive material objections they may have. Unfortunately, we have not been able to reach and have a sit-down with them. Those efforts, despite the commissioner's involvement in reaching out, Pine Tree Civic Associations reaching out to them. We have not been able to reach that sit-down with them because we think if we can just sit down with them, their objections could be easily addressed and satisfied. Keeping in mind that only KSU can allow that access. It's a public institution, a public entity. It's not an access that the county can condemn even in this situation. That being said, Fry Lake Road is a public road, and this property, because it does front a public road, is entitled to access a public road. The issue with the access at this location here becomes where that driveway would be installed and how it would meet Cobb County DOT standards, specifically site distance standards. Looking back, as you can see, the road, Fry Lake Road curves here as well as there's a hill. So depending on where you place the location of that drive can affect the site distance and what would be required in terms of site distance easements potentially and locations to ensure safe access and access that meets Cobb County Department of Transportation standards, which is why you'll notice in our stipulation letter that was dated February 13th, we do include in this stipulation letter that our preferred access point is here on Campus Loop Road, and that we will continue our efforts to allow that to be the case. But if not, access must occur on Fry Lake Road, a public road to which we're entitled to access if there's no other access, but that we would meet all Cobb County DOT standards and requirements as it relates to access onto Fry Lake Road. And that's really where you'll see opposition is simply from this fact of access, ensuring that it's safe, ensuring that it meets DOT standards. In addition, we would have along Fry Lake Road landscaping, extensive landscaping that would be installed again to protect the visual perspectives from Fry Lake Road, which leads back into the residential area of generally known as Pine Tree. But again, what we've tried to establish, and we think we have with this application and with the stipulations specifically, is that we will continue the preferred access route until we're absolutely told no and there's no further way we can move forward with KSU. But the property does need to have access if that route is not, cannot be achieved, and that access on Fry Lake would be pursuant to all Cobb DOT standards, ordinances, and development regulations to ensure that it was safe, along with more extensive landscaping along Fry Lake Road to address the concerns of the neighbors. And so with that, we respectfully request your continued consideration of this application and respectfully request your approval.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, those in opposition, if you'd please identify yourself.
Yes, my name is Mike Lavender. I'm president of the Pine Tree Civic Association, and we've been working with the rabbi from the Shabbat on this project since the first part of the year. We actually walked the property, looked at it, and felt that it would be a great project, considering the fact that they would be accessing the property from Campus Loop Road. Moving the access to Fry Lake Road, we feel would be create an additional safety hazard, and Phil will go over a lot of those things. We had a traffic study done. There's somewhere between 5,000 and 6,000 cars go through that section every week. And we just feel like it would not be safe. And again, Phil will cover some of the more specific details of that.
So my understanding is you support the project as long as the entrance is off Fry Lake Road.
Right, yeah. Yeah, if it's on Campus Loop Road, we don't have, we didn't have any issues with the project at all.
Okay.
But if you move the access to, to Fry Lake Road.
That's your concern.
Right, then we
Okay.
think the property
Fine,
should
okay.
remain R20 and build a house, and it's got an existing driveway
Okay.
that would, meet
I just
standards.
want to make sure I understood. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Phil Anzalone. I'm Vice President of Pine Tree Civic Association. And I'm going to kind of cut through some of these slides because some of it's repeated, uh, which is our button center. To the right. Okay. So Pine Tree Civic represents about 600 homes in the Pine Tree Country Club, Weatherburn Woods area. It's directly west of KSU. As Mike has said, we are fully supportive of this facility. The problem really comes up is the fact that by moving the driveway onto Fry Lake Road, we're creating a major dangerous intersection. And that's some of the detail I'm going to provide. To give you an idea what the main problem here is Campus Loop Road has an excessive amount of traffic. It was originally a Cobb County road, it's 2-lane. KSU over the years has basically built facilities along the road. If you look at this particular diagram, that black box is a multi-level parking lot. And in addition to that, they have surface parking lots marked with the 2 Ps. In addition to that, the 9 homes that are in the block on the left, they were houses that were part of Weatherburn Woods, Pine Tree Civic, and were eventually deeded over to KSU after a lawsuit after the college had built the dorms, which are to the right of that. Those are 4-story dorms. What's also not shown is there's parking additionally. Each of those houses has roughly 20 parking spots. Where the problem really comes in, as you can see where 3590 is with the X up there. Access to these facilities, the traffic comes primarily from Chastain Road, up Campus Loop, but a vast majority of the traffic from the north comes down from Fry Lake Road, which is the road that is adjacent to this property. So we have a residential road that supports traffic way beyond its original designation. This is the site plan. As you can see by the small white letters there, those are houses that surround it. It's an R20 neighborhood. This is the original presentation that Kevin had presented. As you can see, the driveway, there was a stipulation letter that was created on the original application that included all the standard stipulations for the facility to integrate in. What was really interesting on this was the fact that the topography of this property shielded it primarily from the neighborhood. So the major interface was to the front. The dots there are primarily a tree line. As you've seen that already. Here's where the biggest problem is. This is the front of the intersection. As you could see, there's a significant height of topography there that blocks the view. This is looking from that proposed driveway on Fry Lake Road, looking back at that intersection. So not only is there a major hill here on the left, but the road itself peaks where the potential driveway is. One of the problems we have on this thing is we have a heavy amount of peak traffic. In fact, actually, in the past, if you will show you the diagram, the next one is Fry Lake Road was modified about 9 years ago because the traffic in front of the houses that were in front, people couldn't get out of their driveways. So the road was modified to allow the traffic to bypass from Campus Loop. Another issue we have is because this is a 20-foot road, people that park on the sidewalk or on the curb, you cannot get another car past there without coming into incoming traffic. There's a look going the other way. So if you look at this, right now the Cobb County spec basically calls for a 280-foot line of sight. The problem is, if this is the topography that was submitted by the applicant, I've simplified it. This is the line of sight, and as you can see, unfortunately, the driveway is on the left, and actually there's that major hill there. That major hill is not on the applicant's property. That's part of KSU's property. So to modify that and put an 8-foot retaining wall would require KSU to do it, plus it would look terrible. I've done here is basically taken an extract of that other diagram, and if you look at it, the corner of that intersection to that driveway is 226 feet. So even if that hill was there, it does not meet the 280-foot. Also, if you actually drive that road and keep looking for the vehicle that's parked there at 15 feet, at 3.5 feet, you don't actually observe a car in that driveway until you're 102 feet away. Significantly dangerous intersection. We've already had at this other corner here, a resident actually get hit by the car. As I also mentioned, we also, in the past, if you look, there's that little, let me go to the next slide, I think. These basically give you pictures from the driveway, so you can see the sight line is terrible. Even if you extend the driveway all the way to the left of the property, you still will not meet the 280-foot requirement. In addition, on the original application, this telephone pole wasn't even put on the plot. So one of the big concerns, as you could also see, the property has a significant slope. Obviously, the SUV there is on the driveway. The other concern we have is if that driveway is put in on Fry Lake Road, the trees would have to be modified and removed, and we'd create multiple problems. First, the view lines from the residence and the house directly across will look directly into that large parking lot. In addition, the slope of that property requires drainage. That's the peak of the hill. As we've said before, one of the problems on this thing also is it's a very high impermeable surface area between the large building and that 21 station parking lot. It would require a detention pond. That detention pond would have to be right to the right of where that car is in the driveway. The problem is that leaves no room to put any kind of buffer between the neighborhood, the street, so we would have an eyesore that would affect the character. In addition, if even just putting the fence to the left of that vehicle would block the view on the other side. So this is the house that's physically across the street. So in summary, what we're asking for is the modification of the last stipulation letter that was put in that would allow the driveway to be put on Fry Lake Road. There was other conversations with DOT that basically the driveway be extended to the property next door, which is owned by the applicant, and come in at a 45-degree angle. It would require significant engineering, and right now we've seen absolutely no engineering or site plans or any other documentation to support whether that could be done, and the exact calculations of where this retention pond would have to be. So we're asking that this not be approved as it's presented today, but we are strongly in favor of this facility. We believe that it will be to the benefit of the students and to the neighborhood. And that's my presentation.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Burrow. Time's up.
Thank you, sir. Yes, I asked that we hear this today because it's been continued since December. We've had many conversations and meetings. We, as this case was being heard, I literally got an email from the VP of External Affairs at KSU. I spoke with him yesterday, as late as yesterday and other occasions, and explained to him what we're looking at doing as far as the revision of the access on Campus Loop, not encroaching on the property adjacent on the right here. And when I met with Mr. Moore on Friday, he has agreed to look at that option and revise the site plan to show that, and also moving the entrance on Fry Lake as a last resort, but requiring the 280 feet. So I'd like to call Ashley or Amy up, just for the record. The neighbors, Pine Tree Civic, myself, and even the applicant want to be able to access off Campus Loop. We like the project. It's very well done. I've met with the applicant and the attorney too as well, long before all this came into play. But without granting easement, hey Siri, without granting an easement without KSU granting us an easement for this property, we may have to access on Fry Lake, but for safety reasons and congestion and traffic and impact on Pine Tree and Weatherburn Woods and other neighbors, we all prefer Campus Loop. So we're dependent on KSU giving us an easement. But the good news is we are going to have a meeting and we are going to have some new drawings to submit, Mr. Moore, when we do meet with them. So can you just kind of give us?
Kind of recap what's been said,
Yeah.
I guess. Ashley White with the Department of Transportation. So our preference would also be for the entrance to be on Campus Loop. That road is maintained by KSU as well as the parcels adjacent to it.
Right.
So they would have to approve a curb cut there. The issue with the entrance on Fray Lake is sight distance, as you guys saw with the
Right.
pictures. There would be a significant amount of grading that needs to be done to the hill looking left and removal of trees. From the vertical profile, it looked like the hill would need to be graded down at least 7 feet minimum. So,
Yeah.
and there is the curvature, the horizontal curvature of the road there that's an issue as well.
So Ashley, I know we can't deny access on a public road, but we can require that they meet sight distance?
We can require that, but even with the access on Fray Lake, they would need a sight distance easement for the parcel to the south that's owned by KSU. So
okay.
either way, they would
So-
need some approval from
Yeah.
KSU, even to meet horizontal sight distance.
Okay. So that may be another issue that we would discuss with KSU on this. I think their reasoning, well, what I was told was they have plans for future use of the adjacent property. But my suggestion is to go in off this little remnant piece at the intersection in the front, at the very corner, which would be less impact on their property. And I'm not sure what that remnant piece could be used for anyway. But we will discuss it with them. So I'd like to make a motion that we hold this to the next zoning hearing with the intentions of meeting with KSU to obtain an easement.
Have a second. Discussion? Call the question. Passes 5-0, and let's take a short break.
Thank you.
Chairman, The first item on today's other business agenda is to consider other business item number 80, which is to consider a site plan and stipulation amendment for Alan Barron regarding rezoning case Z38 of 2012. The property is located on the south side of Six Flags Parkway, east of Bishop Road, in land lot 505 of the 18th District. By way of background, Mr. Chairman and Board, the property was rezoned to light industrial in 2012 for a truck terminal and truck repair facility. The applicant has purchased the property from the original applicant in 2017 and is in the process of developing their plan for the property. The applicant plan calls for some modifications to the conditions, which include 4 things. The first thing is to relocate the detention pond from the rear of the property to the front of the property. Number 2 is to amend the landscaping plan to place more landscaping along the road and throughout the site. Number 3 is to amend the surface parking standards to allow parking on a non-hardened surface, which would be gravel. And 4th, amend the DOT conditions from 2012 to delete the requirement for a decel lane, sidewalk, curb and gutter. If approved, all previous conditions should remain in effect, and the staff would ask the Board of Commissioners to conduct a public hearing to consider the proposed site plan stipulation amendment. The applicant is here. Is there anyone here opposed to this item? Let the record show there's 3 people opposed, or 2 people opposed. All those wishing to address the board, please come forward to be sworn in.
Morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. Adam Rosen with the law firm Sams, Larkin, Huff, and Bally. Here this morning on behalf of your applicant and other business 80, Alan Barron and Millennium Trucking. Before I go through our presentation, I do want to thank this commission, our district commissioner, and those folks that have been involved with this application, particularly the Mableton Improvement Coalition. This has been a long time coming to get to this point, originally rezoned in 2012. Your applicant purchased the property in 2017, but there's been some significant involvement from the neighborhood, from Mableton Improvement Coalition, from your district commissioner. We appreciate everyone's patience and involvement, and glad to finally be at this point. So there we go. This is your property on Six Flags Parkway. It's right at the intersection of Hillcrest Drive. It's a few different parcels you can see there, 320, 50, and 370 of Six Flags Parkway. It is in one of the few areas of Cobb County that is this much gray of priority industrial, and you can see that we're at the dividing line of Six Flags Parkway, where it transitions into medium and high density residential. I think I've got maybe an older zoning map here showing you our property is zoned light industrial from the 2012 case, and then the property to the rear of us, I think maybe has since then been updated to show its industrial zoning as well. But you can see the character of the area from that. But Six Flags Parkway is not completely the dividing line. You can see that driving down Six Flags Parkway, and you can see that from the zoning here across Six Flags. A lot of it is residential there, but there is industrial uses there as well, and you can see those reflected. Some of the surrounding uses, you may not be able to really to read these, but very automotive, contractor, industrial heavy area, particularly on the southern side of Six Flags Parkway where this property is located. This is the current site plan that's been submitted. The detail of it's a little difficult to see, but what we've tried to do is to enhance, for one, enhance the landscaping, and that's along the frontage of Six Flags Parkway. That's to install some planter islands throughout the parking lot. Try to come up with some ways to enhance the landscaping from what was originally approved in 2012. The other visual change you can see from this plan from the 2012 plan is to move the stormwater detention facility towards Six Flags Parkway. It was originally located more towards the rear of the property. As far as the business operations, giving you some bullet points there, 3 to 5 trucks are coming in and out of this site daily for the applicant's operations. This is not a 24-hour facility. Oftentimes you think of a logistics facility or a truck terminal, trucks coming in and out of the site 24 hours a day and on weekends. This is more of a normal operation, normal business day operations, and not on the weekends. At any given time, somewhere in the range of 6 employees. So it's a large site, but it's not a large-scale operation compared to a lot of the other truck terminals and truck repair facilities in this area. Some of the site improvements that have already been accomplished from the 2012 rezoning, the tree plantings along Six Flags Drive, the wooden privacy fence which divides this property from its residential neighbor, the vinyl chain link fence along the front of Six Flags Parkway. Those are ones that we are recognizing and here to help enhance, but some of those have already been done, or at least attempted to be done by the prior owner. There were some dilapidated buildings on site. Those have been demolished, and the current office building that is being used as an office has been renovated and remodeled and is Millennium's current office building and is proposed to stay that way. Our requests today are into a couple of different categories. One is the surface parking standards. The original request was to waive paving requirement in total and to allow the site to be gravelled. If you look at the surrounding properties, you can see that is primarily what these sites are utilized as. A lot of it is trucking, but no matter what the use is, a lot of it is a gravelled site. This is also a large site, so paving the entire site not only is cost prohibitive, but it obviously increases the amount of pervious on a large site like that. So for those reasons, and because of the use with the heavy weight of the trucks for this type of use, we've made that request. What we've done in the stipulation letter from earlier this month is to try to create a hybrid that allows some gravel to remain on site where the trucks will be circulating, where the most wear and tear is impacted on the site, back to actually have either parking pads or a parking pad and a requirement that any parking be on a hardened surface as the code requires. Of course, any outline of gravelled area or parking area would be curbed to keep any stormwater and gravel on the site. As we know, those are a couple of the concerns with gravel on any site. The second section would be DOT recommendations. The original request was to waive sidewalk, curb, gutter, a deceleration lane, and the closing of the second entrance. Their applicant is agreeable to closing the second entrance. That's the one that aligns on Hillcrest. Some of the concerns there were that allowed trucks to enter straight into the property and gave them the incentive to come in off of Hillcrest Drive, which is generally a more residential area. So that will be closed, and I think has been for some time, was not originally. What we've also proposed instead of the deceleration lane is to expand the entrance drive radius. That'll serve the same purpose and allow the trucks to enter and exit the property and allow for a wider radius. But that would be subject to, of course, to DOT's recommendations. And the difficulty, the hardship there is a utility box in the office building location being along Six Flags Parkway. There's not a lot of room for a deceleration lane, but we can accommodate a wider radius, which would hopefully alleviate the concerns of entering and exiting off of Six Flags Parkway and entering into other traffic. The other section would be related to landscaping. I've tried to kind of outline here for you again where we're proposing additional landscaping. The 2 rows along Six Flags Parkway was originally 1 row, so we've tried to go in and take some of those original proposals and enhance them a little bit because we recognize that the aesthetics of the site and what it should look like and the appearance can be overall enhanced by some just basic landscaping that can be beefed up from what it was before. We're agreeable to the stormwater management recommendations and conditions. Importantly, that includes the oil water separator for repair facility. The only change there is to move the detention pond. And then, of course, any parking areas that are installed will include stormwater inlets so that any discharge from parked trucks or other vehicles will be captured and will be run through the stormwater management system. That way, we're establishing some criteria to be able to deal with the concerns related to having gravel on any site. The repair building is not constructed as of now. It is planned to be constructed. It was not set out in a lot of detail in the original 2012 zoning. The final site plan approval had this red outline of where the building should be located in this general area, but it also required that any repair trucks undergoing repair in the repair bays be faced towards the rear of the property. So you can see with this location, may be impossible or difficult to actually get into the building. So the proposal here, and the applicant is willing and requesting that this location be moved closer to Six Flags Parkway. Of course, the location, architecture, and orientation would be subject to approval by our district commissioner. We think that will also add for a better streetscape to have a finished building product there on site instead of just a parking area. But of course, since that was a condition of the 2012 case, that would also require being changed as a part of this approval today. So with that, again, we thank everyone for being a part of this, for the years that it has been pending. We appreciate your consideration. We ask for your approval. Your applicant is here with us this morning as well. If we can answer any questions, we'd be happy to do so.
Okay, thank you, sir. Okay, those in opposition?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Denny Wilson, and I live at 56 Hillcrest Drive. The street that he talked about that dead ends at one of their parking spaces, that's the street that I live on. I sent pictures to some of the Board of Commissioners this past week on how their trucks have torn up Hillcrest Drive because they come straight down Hillcrest, which dead ends into Six Flags, and their gate is right there, so it allows them easy access, which is why they use Six Flags to enter. I don't trust Millennium Trucking because in 2012, the Board of Commissioners gave them permission to rezone that property. And even though a number of citizens came before the board and asked them to not approve it, it was approved anyway. It's going on now 7 years, and Millennium Trucking has not fulfilled any of the stipulations that were conditions of their zoning approval by the Cobb Board of Commissioners. Even though he said that they've made improvements to the property, many of those improvements were made by the previous owners. The trees and everything, the fencing, I think all of that was put there by the previous owners. So I don't think Millennium Trucking has made any improvements. You guys requested that they do all repairs indoors. They don't even have an indoor building there to do repairs. And there was another stipulation that they only have 20 trucks on the property. There's about 45 trucks on the property that I counted last week. And if you look at this diagram here, there's the diagram from 2012. That's what it looked like. And look at it from last year, from 2018. They've not made any improvements. And I don't think they have any intentions or had any intentions of doing so. They thought that the neighborhood would just turn their heads, nobody would pay attention, and they could operate the way that they wanted to, and nobody would say anything. And I've gone down several times and talked to them about that particular piece of property. So code enforcement, I turned to them, and code enforcement filed various violations against them. That's when they came back to you guys to try to get out of those violations from code enforcement. They have a court date this month on March the 28th. To go before the judge for the violations that code enforcement has put on them. And to date, I don't think they've corrected any of those either. So I ask you today to hold them accountable for the stipulation that you put on them in 2012. And don't let them off the hook, because that's the community that we call home. And if we can't go home to a clean, safe community, then where can we go? So don't back down from them. I mean, make them accountable just as you do us as taxpayers. I mean, when we don't pay our taxes, when we don't clean up our properties, they come down on us. So I don't think they should get a free pass either. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Good morning. My name is Robin Meyer. I'm the chairman of the board of the Mapleton Improvement Coalition. The the primary issues for us on this property have to do with the issue related to paving, the issues related to the DOT comments, and the possibility of an additional building here. So first of all, on the issue of paving, we strongly believe that the entire parcel should be paved, rather, not pave 100% of the parcel, but that the area that the trucks will park and drive on should be paved, not gravel. We, in all candor, have a relatively low degree of trust in this situation because there have been so many code enforcement violations and development standard violations and permit violations. It's my understanding that grading began on this property for the parking areas without a land disturbance permit, for example. So if there are areas that are paved and areas that are gravel and a promise made to park only in the paved areas, it's not clear to us how that can reasonably be enforced. People driving by will not be able to tell whether a truck is parked on the gravel or parked on pavement. And in all candor, that's really citizen reporting of code enforcement violations related to zoning cases is really the best compliance tool that we have, but we won't be able to tell that. So in an abundance of caution, we believe that the original stipulation for paving should remain in place. Similarly, as for this new building, the prior zoning did allow for the new building to be built without any additional input from the Board of Commissioners. We would ask that you not allow that situation to continue, but rather, if there's going to be a new building built on this property, that when that building is ready to be proposed, that the applicants come back with another other business agenda item so that you can see exactly where the building will be placed, the community can see exactly where the building will be placed, and the community can have some input into the state of the property at that time, the architecture, the design, the location of the building. This is a very busy intersection. It's a T-shaped intersection of two-lane roads with truck traffic and people trying to get to work. There are lots and lots of neighborhoods around this area, despite the fact that it was designated as a priority industrial area. In fact, the property next door, designated as a priority industrial area, is a single-family home. So it may look gray on your map, but it doesn't look gray. It doesn't look totally industrial to our eye as we live there. Lastly is the issue of sidewalk, curb, and gutter. We agree that we can agree to the deletion of the decel lane, but not to the elimination of sidewalk, curb, and gutter. This isn't, regardless of the future use of this area, whether it is industrial, commercial, residential. You notice the land use across the street is residential. The land use plan across the street is residential. We need sidewalk, curb, and gutter. I mean, that's a standard direction in which our roadways are going, and there doesn't seem to be any reason that there should be a distinction for this particular property. I live about 2 miles from this property, and it's been increasingly apparent to me as I have driven by it in the time since it has been rezoned that this is a difficult area related to zoning. As you can see from your overhead maps, we have industrial uses adjacent to residential uses. It's an issue that has been extant in our community for years and years, but it's not something that we can step back from. The current owner of this property, Mr. Barron, bought this property with these stipulations in place. This is not a secret. I mean, you can click on the GIS map and see what the stipulations are for recently zoned property. The community has been operating under the impression in the ensuing years since the rezoning that those rezoning requirements would be held in place. And that's what we participate in this process for. We understand that things change and property owners may need to ask for relief from one or another stipulation, or their plans may change and just may need to go in a different direction. But this doesn't fit that latter category. There's no change of plans here. This is still a truck terminal. It was bought as a truck terminal with that zoning in place. And we would ask you to uphold the majority and the spirit of the stipulations that were put in place as the result of the last rezoning, with a lot of community input, a lot of discussion, and frankly, we think if it was going to be a truck terminal, probably the best stipulations that we could get at the time. We can make a few modifications to them, but not the wholesale setting aside that we feel like is being asked for here. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone in opposition? Mr. Peterson, what are the staff's recommendations?
Mr. Chairman, Board, the staff's going to have a split recommendation on this case. They're asking for 4 things in the request, which are it's in the very front of your other business packet. So staff would recommend the Board of Commissioners approve request number 1 and 2 and deny request 3 and 4. Also, subject to the site plan received March 8th, 2019. Stormwater management comments contained in the other business packet. Cobb DOT comments contained in the other business packet. And all previous conditions not in conflict remain in effect.
Okay, thank you, sir. Commissioner Cupid.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm inclined to support staff's recommendation, but would like to speak to stormwater about the movement of the detention pond.
Again, Dave Braden with the Stormwater Management Division.
Hi, Dave. The request for moving the detention pond, I see that there's a staff recommendation for that to be reviewed at site plan review.
Correct.
But from looking at this, on a cursory basis, is the topography such that the site will drain to where the detention pond is being proposed?
Either locations are suitable based on
Okay.
the topo. So it
could
really
work.
doesn't affect the design, but we want to make sure that obviously we get the chance to review it at plan review.
Okay,
Right, yeah.
very good. Also.
The topo would support both locations, in other words, yeah.
Okay, very good. Also, I do have some concern with respect to the request not to pave the site. And looking at the stormwater assessment, there is a stream that is either adjacent or on the site.
It runs along the right
Okay.
eastern property line.
So how would that be impacted were the site not to have gravel?
They're going to have to pave, well, they're definitely going to have to pave the driveway coming in and around where the building is. But stormwater is a little bit mixed in our preference, because obviously if you pave the whole parking area, we're going to have a lot more runoff. On the other hand, gravel doesn't allow an easy transport of any kind of, if a truck is leaking or is awaiting maintenance, to be able to capture that in an oil water separator or a water quality device.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that they're going to eventually have a maintenance facility, we want to make sure that the area around the maintenance facility is paved. Any area that tractor trailers or the tractors are going to be parked awaiting maintenance would have to be part of that paved area so that we can get it directly to a separator. But just out where the trailers are parking,
yeah,
not that big of a deal, because trailers really aren't the issue. It's the cabs and the trucks. So
okay.
Be our preference if we could maybe have a mix of pervious paving and where is needed to have concrete or asphalt, but limited as much as possible. So
Okay.
it has to all be paved. Pond's just going to be bigger and have more runoff to the stream, but
Okay.
yeah.
Very good. Thank you, David. I have a question for DOT with respect to this site.
Amy Diaz, DOT.
Hi, Amy. In the original zoning by Louis Cerizar in 2012, there is a DOT recommendation that reads as follows. It recommends the applicant verify the minimum intersection site distance to see if it's available, and if it is not, implement remedial measures subject to department's approval to achieve the minimum requirement.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, if the applicant, it says here the applicant is to verify that. How does the applicant do that?
When they basically settle on their driveway location, so right now they've closed one of them, which I know is one of the bigger concerns for site distance. But what they do is they do a site distance profile for us. At that location, they have an engineer send that to us.
Okay.
And they verify that they have the minimum site distance for that speed of roadway.
So they will be working with DOT with respect to that? I
Correct.
couldn't
That is
tell
part
when
of
it
the
says
site
to see
plan
if the
review
applicant-
process.
That would be part of site plan review.
Yeah, we note it because there was concern about the location, so we note it for them so they know it's coming. But any place like that, that's part of site plan review.
Okay, I presume the site plan review already occurred. Did it not already occur for this site for it to be operating?
I know that this site has had several iterations, so I'm not
Yes.
sure if we've reviewed their latest location.
I would ask for that to occur. I've been speaking with the attorney about that requirement and possibly increasing the turn radius on and off of that site to facilitate trucks going in. And, I'm not a DOT engineer by any means to know what that looks like and how that impacts site distance. So upon the recommendation that I make today, I would just ask for DOT's assistance in ensuring that that site distance requirement is being met. Yeah. Also, can you help me understand the deceleration lane request? I know that's a significant expense for the applicant that was included in the original zoning. They're
Yes.
providing they have about 3 to 5 trucks per day, which seems.
Well, again, it's an issue of enforcement. If they decide to change their operations, this is a truck terminal area. We can have trucks going in more frequently than that. We don't have any way of enforcing that. If you have more than 5 trucks, then we cut you off.
Yep.
So
Yep.
they have, since it is a 2-lane roadway, we went ahead and left that recommendation in place.
Yeah, I can understand that. I mean, I want to take into consideration the current conditions of the site, that it's has less truck traffic, but I've been assessing this application, I've always also considered who is to monitor that, and if it were to increase, when do you reach a reasonable threshold to add that condition? And if it's going to be a truck terminal, it does facilitate more trucks being in place, and it was not stipulated the daily trip of trucks within the original zoning. Yeah. Okay, thank you, Amy. No problem. Appreciate it. Bear with me, Chairman. I'm just getting my notes from communicating with the applicant. Okay. Yes, I'm inclined to follow staff's recommendation here today. Even though I know I've had communication with the attorney that there are some conditions that were on the site as part of the original zoning. And, because of the community's diligence, we're here today to address some of the conditions that haven't been met. But the site is intended, or it was zoned to be a quite an intense site. And just from driving by, I noticed that there are a number of trucks that are parked on the property as we speak today. I'm also inclined to have the site be paved because, again, of the intensity of traffic for this to be a terminal. Also because there is an on-site stream stream that is there. I'm concerned about for this to be slated as a possible repair facility. If you have trucks in disrepair, we're going to be very limited in how we keep any toxic materials from leaking into that stream buffer. Just give me one more moment. I want to go through the email here from the applicant. Okay, so with that, I would like to approve other business item 80, with keeping in place the first two requests or modifications, which is to relocate the detention pond from the rear of the property to the front of the property. And to number two, amend the landscape plan to place more landscaping along the road and throughout the site. However, I am not approving stipulation number three, which says to amend the surface parking standard to allow parking on non-hardened surface, nor can I modify the DOT recommendation from 2012 to delete the deceleration lane, sidewalk, curb, and gutter. All other staff comments to remain in effect, and also include stormwater management's comments, which is to subject this application to site plan review. Yep. I'm sorry, there's,
And pardon my interruption, Commissioner Cupid.
yes, sir.
When I read my first condition, it was site plan received March 8th, 2019, which is the most recent site plan.
Okay.
Can I add on to that with the final site plan to be approved by the district commissioner?
Yes,
Okay.
if I have that here. And I'd also ask for the building to come back for other business when it is proposed.
We have a second? We have a second. Any discussion? Commissioner Ott?
John, one of the opposition spoke about numerous code violations or warnings. Can you talk about what those were for?
And I did not research those, Commissioner. I'm going to guess they had to do with the outdoor stores, the gravel parking, and the extra driveway they added parallel to Hillcrest.
Yeah, they haven't been operating under current conditions, and right now, I can't tell you what those are, but I do know they're not parking on a hardened surface.
So they were operating but not following what was originally approved?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, I'll call the question. And it passes 3-2 with Commissioner Burrow and the chairman in opposition.
Commissioner Ott.
Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner Ott in opposition. Apologize.
Thank you. Item number 5 today is to consider amending the stipulations for Hilltop TIC LP and Rough Snow Limited regarding rezoning application Z11 of 2016 for property located at the southeast corner of Veterans Memorial Highway and Powell Drive in land lot 34 of the 18th District. By way of background, the subject property was rezoned to NRC in 2016 for a climate-controlled self-service storage facility and retail. The climate-controlled self-service storage facility is no longer going to be developed on the property. The zoning stipulations specifically allow and disallow certain uses on this property. And the applicant only desires to operate typical shopping center uses from the front of the property. The applicant would like the opportunity to be able to lease the basement of the rear of the building, rear of the shopping center for 2 vocational schools, which are not permitted in the NRC zoning district. The schools would be a cosmetology school and a school for electricians. The space intended for the vocational schools would be ideal for these schools since the uses don't need the road exposure that a retail use would need. The vocational schools would have the same or less intensity than other uses allowed in NRC, such as convenience stores, grocery stores, or fast food restaurants. If approved, all other zoning conditions would remain in effect. The staff would ask the Board of Commissioners conduct a public hearing to consider this proposal. And last month, the board did hold this case, so there was some issues that the applicant needs to resolve regarding paving, I believe. So is there anyone here opposed to this request? Let the record show there's no one opposed. The applicant is present. Would the applicant please come forward?
Oh, okay. For the applicant. Yeah.
Good morning, Chairman, members of the board. I'm Lauren Hansford with the Galloway Law Group. I'm here this morning on behalf of the applicants for this other business item. As Mr. Peterson mentioned, this is a request to add vocational school uses in the basement of this property. It would be a cosmetology school and a school for electricians. If I may just briefly go through some of the things, I think it's important to understand the history of this property. It's a rather old, probably 25-year-old strip retail shopping center. My clients purchased the property about 2 years ago, and when they purchased it, the property was in complete disrepair. The previous property owner had really let the property go. When my clients purchased the property, it was vacant except for the Dollar General, which had indicated at that time that they were planning not to renew their lease. The storefront glass on the rest of the center had been smashed numerous times. The mechanicals had been stripped. There were homeless folks living in the basement, and there was a significant criminal element at that time, and evidence of significant drug use in that basement space as well. So my clients purchased the property in March 2017. They have spent over $150,000 beyond what they had originally anticipated, just cleaning up the property. And if I may just briefly go through some of the things they have done, they've done some site, and I can actually put this up on the overhead if that. So you can see there was significant site and interior cleanup. They've removed debris. They've cleaned up the internal debris and removed this dock that encroached onto Powell Drive. There were over 3,000 abandoned tires. There was a shed at the very rear of the property behind a cell tower. It took them weeks, almost months, to remove those tires. That was an additional expense. They engaged a demolition contractor to demolish that shed. All of the storefront glass has been removed, replaced. The stucco has been replaced. There was a non-compliant non-compliant sign for the shopping center that was replaced with a compliant multi-tenant monument sign. That was a significant cost. And they have repaired the parking lot. The issue at the last hearing was the paving. I don't believe there was. I believe the use of the property was a positive thing, but there is a zoning condition that the front of the property be repaved, and that was a concern. Since that time, we have been in contact with the DOT folks for the county. Just this Friday, they sent us an email saying that their resurfacing engineer had gone out to the property and come up with 2 alternatives. My client sent those to his contractor. One of the 2 of those will be acceptable. So that is something that he intends to do. He would like some additional time to do that, given all of these expenses that he's incurred. He'd like to go ahead and get these tenants into the site. So he would request that the repaving of the front parking lot be done by August 31st of this year. I believe the other stipulations that we've discussed with both the Mapleton Improvement Coalition and Commissioner Cupid are all acceptable. So with that, I just respectfully request that you approve this application subject to those conditions. I have Ken Murchison with the owner here with me as well to answer any specific questions you may have.
Okay, I think we're doing so far so good. I just want to hear from John about what the recommendations are from the staff.
Mr. Chairman of the Board, the staff would recommend the Board of Commissioners approve the request to allow vocational schools in the building, subject to the fire department comments contained in the other business packet, and all previous conditions not in conflict to remain in effect.
Okay, thank you, John. Commissioner Cupid.
Thank you, Chairman. I may have Ashley approach and we can talk about the paving of the site.
Ashley White with the Department of Transportation.
Yes, good morning. Yes, can you speak to the 2 options that you discussed with the applicant and the life of that? Because last time we were here, we talked about the difference of resurfacing versus repaving.
Right, so I reached out to our resurfacing engineer, and her 2 options, number 1 would be to mill and overlay the parking lot, so it would be milled down to the base level, and then overlaying with 2 inches of asphalt. So that would be repaving the entire parking lot.
Okay.
The second option she brought up, which I wasn't familiar with, but it's called Permaflex. And instead of usually there's 2 inches of asphalt, 1 inch, there's a bottom 1 inch layer and then another 1 inch layer on top of that. So the second option would replace one of those inches of asphalt with a solution called Permaflex, which she says holds up just as well as the 2 inches of asphalt. The Permaflex doesn't require the entire milling down of the parking lot. It just requires milling down along the edges where the asphalt meets the concrete.
Okay. And what's the life of that? Do you know?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
Maintain. Okay, thank you. Okay, I have a question also for our discussion with the applicant on 2 other additional stipulations. Yes, Ken or Lauren,
You
I'll
asked,
take either
you
one.
asked what the life of that, and we asked the engineer that we came out there, and he said, in excess of 10 years, if you don't have any subsurface, like a sewer break, and you properly maintain it just with every 3 to 5 years of seal coat. And so
Okay.
currently, there's a 2-inch asphalt overlay that's over 15 years old, and the base is fine, but the 2-inch asphalt overlay has not been maintained for 15 years, and it's been neglected.
Okay.
So that was the comment that we had.
Okay, thank you, Ken, appreciate that. Yesterday, we talked about the rear of the site and also the western border of the site. The proposal for the western border was to landscape it and to keep it gated, and so we don't have traffic going through there to the rear. Can we agree to that being a stipulation today, to landscape it?
Yeah, well, what we would do is we'd submit an updated landscape plan
Okay.
on or before May 31st that includes a landscape area for that western border. And that western border, we only have 13 feet of property between the building and the right-of-way for Powell Drive.
Okay.
So we have a turning radius in there, but we would obviously keep the turning radius per code for the curb cut and then landscape that.
Okay, and is there a gate that's going to keep traffic from entering the rear that's along Powell Drive?
We currently have a gate there.
Okay.
And we've
Can we keep it
currently had it
closed?
locked, and some of the less lawful tenants behind us have cut the lock open and tried to park cars there, but we do have a gate, we're locking it and we're keeping it secured.
Okay. I'm gonna stipulate that, keep the gate closed, and that'll keep traffic from getting back there.
Yeah, we only want to open the gate just for dumpster service.
Okay.
Once a week.
All right. And I saw that you did replace the stairs.
Yeah.
From the last time we met.
And the other small items that we have, just some fencing on Old Powder Springs Road.
Yes, I do have that in.
And the paint, we'll have that done in the next 60 days.
Okay, great.
Thank you for your consideration.
All right, thank you. All right, with that, I'm prepared to make a motion.
Okay.
That we approve this other business item, subject to the Mapleton Improvement Coalition's letter dated February 12th, striking the first bullet with respect to paving, and also striking the fourth bullet referring to the date of paving. I also would like to make this subject to DOT's recommendation that one of 2 resurfacing options be met per letter dated March 15th from Ashley White. I can forward that to the clerk's office. Also to approve this, subject to an email I sent removing the asphalt repaving and resurfacing comment, keeping in that rear walls are to be removed of peeling paint and overgrown shrubs to be removed, and also including the rear staircase to be replaced, which has already been done. But I'll just turn that in. And also adding in a new stipulation or adding the date of August 31st to the DOT stipulation for the resurfacing, and that is August 31st of 2019. Also adding that the western driveway is to be landscaped per an updated landscaping plan to be submitted by May 31st of 2019. And the fence leading to that area is to be kept closed. Also, that the fence to the rear of the property is to be kept closed other than for servicing of the dumpster. Finally, and per our discussion yesterday, adding in that in 3 years, the rear of the property is to be resurfaced per one of DOT's recommendation. 3 years of today's approval date. So that would be March 17th of 2022. All other staff comments and recommendations to be included, not otherwise in conflict.
Except for March 19th, right? Today's the
I'm
19th.
sorry, today's the 19th, not 17th.
Just want to make sure. I'll give them 2 days.
Fine.
Okay, we have a second? We have a second. Any discussion? Call the question. Passes 5-0.
Thank you. The last item on today's other business agenda is to consider other business number 10, 2019, which is to consider a stipulation amendment for Dollar Tree Stores Incorporated regarding rezoning case Z95 of 2003. The property is located at the southeasterly intersection of Kennesaw Due West Road and Stylesboro Road and land lot 216 and 241 of the 20th District. By way of background, the subject property was rezoned in 2003 and was developed specifically as drugstore. The stipulations also govern the signage for the drugstore. The applicant would like to change the use or user to a Dollar Tree store with their specific signage package. The proposed use is permitted in the zoning district, and the proposed signage comports to the sign code. If approved, all previous conditions should remain in effect. The staff would ask the Board of Commissioners to conduct a public hearing and consider the proposed stipulation amendment. The applicant is present. Is there anyone here opposed to this item? Please raise your hand.
Seriously. Wow. Learn something new every day.
Let the record show there's 9 people here opposed. All those wishing to address the board, please come forward to be sworn in.
Okay, Mr. Moore, it's all yours.
Thank you, and good morning again. Kevin Moore here on behalf of the applicant and owner in this other business application. This application, as explained by Mr. Peterson, it concerns a triangle-shaped piece of property. It's identified on your screens right now, zoned LRC. It's the pink triangle in the middle of the screen at the intersection of Kennesaw Due West Road, which runs on the left-hand side of this property as you're looking at the picture, and the intersection with Stylesboro Road, which was on the right. This property actually has a pretty detailed zoning history. This property was rezoned to LRC for a drugstore use as the result of a lawsuit. It was the settlement of a lawsuit when this property was actually rezoned, before any of you were commissioners, in fact. But it was the settlement of a lawsuit. At the time, please keep in mind there was a couple of major differences which resulted in why this property was rezoned. Number one, to LRC, which is limited retail commercial, as opposed to NRC, which is what you would typically see at an intersection like this that's in a neighborhood activity center, and why it was so tightly controlled. The primary reason, 2 primary reasons. Number one, you'll notice at this intersection there's 2 other large commercial uses across the street. across Stylesboro. There's a new shopping center that's just to the north of that NRC piece, which is an auto repair. There's a new shopping center that's there now at this location. That was not there previously at the time this was originally zoned, and you can see it there. It's the blue. That's a shopping center that was developed post the LRC and subject properties settlement. In addition, the property to the south of this property that adjoins it, you'll see there's an R20 buffer that's part of this property. That's part of the zoning that was done, and then you'll see the R20 OSC. All of that property south of this was just raw acreage. At the time, one of the biggest concerns with doing a commercial tract at this intersection, at this location, was the ability to make sure that could be stepped down, to make sure that you didn't have non-transitional types of zonings or uses going to the large land acreage to the south that's now zoned R20 OSC. That being said, it was zoned R20 OSC. It's now has been developed by Lennar and is a very nice subdivision called Brumby Place. So that is no longer present. What we've got in this issue now is that Rite Aid, this was originally an Eckerd's drugstore, then it became a Rite Aid drugstore, and now Rite Aid is no more. The particular owner, in looking at this property, has made a very firm decision that the drugstore use is no longer economically viable at this location, and is seeking a change in the use from drugstore specific use only to limited retail uses as defined in the LRC, limited retail commercial zoning category, for purposes as a Dollar Tree. Couple of things. Number one, the site plan will not change whatsoever. The site plan that you see on your screen before you is the same exact site plan that was approved as part of the resolution and settlement of zoning in 2000 prior, as well as the building exterior. The building exterior is an all-brick building. It's a very nice-looking building. Again, that exterior is not changing except for the name on the building, from Rite Aid to Dollar Tree, and that is it. Nothing else is changing in terms of the site plan, in terms of the exterior of the building, except for the signage of who is occupying that building. And in fact, when you look at the use that's being proposed by Dollar Tree here, the sale of merchandise and goods, the sale of merchandise and goods sold at the Dollar Tree store is exactly the same types of merchandise that is sold and goods that are sold in your modern day drugstores that Rite Aid was selling, except for the prescription drugs. That's the only difference in terms of what is actually being sold inside these two stores. The only other difference that will be present at this location, which further supports approval, is that the current drive-through will be eliminated. There will not be a drive-through for a Dollar Tree. There's no reason to have that because, again, they do not dispense pharmaceutical drugs and sell pharmaceutical drugs by prescription, and that will not be a part of the future use for Dollar Tree. So, in fact, when you compare the two uses, when you remove the drive-through, when you remove the sale of prescription drugs, bless you, this particular use and specific use is actually less impactful to the overall area from a use perspective. The staff has in fact noted that the proposed use is consistent and complies with the LRC, limited retail commercial category, as well as the signage package that's proposed also complies with the Cobb County sign ordinance. And we can go ahead and put the building up there. Those elements are present, comply with the current zoning code, both from a signage and use standpoint. But we've received a good deal of opposition, and I'm sure they'll be speaking here today. And the opposition has been a criticism of the brand. And that's it. A criticism of it being a Dollar Tree in a location that some people who have expressed their opinion don't believe Dollar Tree belongs here. And I'll quote some of the things that I've seen from this opposition that has been generated in the emails, that Dollar Tree is not good enough. That Dollar Tree is not high dollar enough for our area. And surprisingly, that Dollar Tree will bring in low-income people and therefore more crime, which is just as offending as it is preposterous. It's our position in this case that the board simply does not have the discretion legally to choose and select one brand over another. That the board cannot choose Starbucks versus Caribou, that the board cannot choose and decide between Dollar Tree as a brand versus some other brand in a location such as this. While the board does have broad discretion in zoning matters, that discretion, we believe, is not conferred to that extent to make that level of economic decision as part of your discretionary powers in zoning. In this instance, should the board use that level of discretion to choose between brands, we believe it meets the very definition of an arbitrary and capricious decision not related to the public welfare. Simply put, it's choosing between brands on no reasonable, identifiable basis. Dollar Tree is an outstanding company. It's a Fortune 130 company that has been extremely successful and is extremely well run. And they intend to run this store in an excellent manner in keeping with the neighborhood and in keeping with the area. There are currently some landscape maintenance items that the owner has let go, and they intend, first thing, to get those addressed and make this building and property look appropriate for the area and to maintain that landscaping, and that will be addressed immediately. The only difference will be the name on the store. And otherwise, it's a use that is consistent with the prior use, that's actually less impactful to the prior use, and one that we believe and would respectfully request your approval of this other business request to allow this use, as well as the signing package, which all complies with current Cobb County zoning regulations for LRC. I'm here and can answer any questions that you may have, as well as representatives of Dollar Tree. Mr. Gene Matthews is here and can also answer any questions that you may have. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you, sir. Okay, those in opposition? You have 10 minutes. Just please let us know who you are.
Yes. My name is Stephanie Behringer. I am one of the residents who lives directly behind this property and would be directly affected by it. First thing I want to say is, while you as a board cannot, or I assume you cannot, determine between a Starbucks and a Caribou or whatever the other coffees are, what you can do is make a reasonable decision of what type of property belongs in certain areas. We would oppose this just like we would oppose you sticking a Walmart right in the middle of a neighborhood, or a strip club, or a vape shop. If it doesn't belong, it just doesn't belong. You cannot fit a square peg into a round hole. This does not belong. Just based on what is zoned on now, the community is completely open to things such as a drugstore. It is a stretch to say that there's a shopping center across the street. Those are all very local neighborhood stores where the people actually live in the community. They're actually impacted by it. There's a vet, there was a bake shop, there's a dry cleaner. They're all very local necessities. We don't have a necessity for a Dollar Tree or Dollar Store to be there. In accordance with the current zoning, this should be a store that the community finds useful and as a necessity. That's just not the case with this. It is absolutely not the case, 100% not the case. And I would ask, ladies and gentlemen, that you all would consider the people who are actually impacted by this and our property values. I have no problem with a Dollar Tree store. I've visited them a couple times a year. I don't have a problem with that. What I do have a problem with is that this is absolutely an inappropriate place for a Dollar Tree to be. In accordance with the zoning and the signage rezone, living right behind it, you don't want blaring neon green lights right behind your home. It's just not an appropriate place for a Dollar Tree to be. And I respectfully ask that you would deny this application.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Board. My name is Paul Petruska. I'm a homeowner in the residential area.
I just wanted to, I guess, point out a couple of concerns with the LRC zoning code. According to the code, low-intensity shopping and Dollar Tree, as far as I know, and when I just did quick researches, averages 1.5 million per store net sales per year. That exceeds, to me, that would far exceed a low-intensity shopping area. Also, within the LRC codes, properties developed within the LRC should reflect the neighborhood area. The Dollar Tree does not reflect the neighborhood area in any which shape or form, as clearly stated. Last but not least, within the LRC code, square footage for LRC is 5,000 square foot with not to exceed 10,000 square feet. Now, the current building as it stands is 10,900 square feet, so it does exceed the limitations of the LRC code. Also, I would ask, and it goes further to state that it can be 35,000 square feet if designated for grocery store. And as far as I know, Dollar Tree does not have refrigerated items, does not have vegetables of any sort. So could that be considered a grocery store? Now, as far as the impact, the gentleman that was up here was stating that the responses he's heard is that it brings in undesirables. Not the case. Not worried about the people that it brings in. It's in our community. We know who's in our community. What I'm worried about, and you can go on any web search, you can go on any case study from any multiple city. What are the impacts of the Dollar Tree? First and foremost, any study comes up with independently owned stores can't compete. The Dollar Tree undersells everybody in the area. That means the stores that are directly north of it, adjacent to it, are now going to be competing with that one store. What happens to the retail businesses when the Dollar Tree puts them out of business? Number two, Dollar Tree limits access to healthy foods. Okay, we have grocery stores around us currently, and I'm willing to travel the distance to go to a grocery store, but what happens when people start feeling the need that, hey, Dollar Tree's right here, let's go buy from here? Next thing you know, vegetables are out. Dollar Tree serves no vegetables. All right. Quality of life, I'm just gonna say right there, quality of life, Dollar Tree does not bring in a good quality of life. Dollar Tree brings in fast, processed foods, not good for human consumption. If I was to address the board, the thing that I would ask the most is that the board grants a priority to a local, independent, fully serviced store. Dollar Tree does not help the community in our area in one bit. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Haley Everson. I am a resident in the area immediately behind the proposed site for the Dollar Tree. I do have several concerns that kind of echo what has already been stated, and constituents in our area have the same concerns, so much so that 110 of them have signed a petition echoing some of the concerns that we have with regards to this rezoning, and the fact that the rezoning will be a permanent rezoning of this particular space to a high-intensity store, whereas now it's limited retail, which did serve the community very well, and a drugstore in the area would be a very viable option. I believe we heard that that was no longer a viable option in that specific lot. That's in direct opposition to anything that I've heard from anyone that I've spoken to in multiple surrounding neighborhoods. We actually very much so miss the drugstore component. As a mother of a toddler, I loved being able to drive through and get my needed prescriptions and all of that at the corner right there where it was. So by saying that that is no longer a viable option and that land for that use, I believe is false. So if I could present the signatures of those that agree, I would appreciate that.
All right, thank you very much. John, should we hear the staff's recommendation? And then I'll give the floor to Commissioner Gamble.
Mr. Chair and Board, the staff would recommend the Board of Commissioners approve the request to allow the Dollar Tree store, subject to the sign package contained in the other business package, and all previous conditions not in conflict to remain in effect.
Okay, Commissioner Gamble.
Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Peterson, quick question for you. One of the opposition stated that we were rezoning this property. My understanding is that we are just approving a user outside of the original Eckerts. Is that correct?
That's correct. This is not a rezoning of the property. It's already zoned properly. This is an amendment to the conditions.
Right. So that way, Mrs. Emerson, we're not changing the zoning, we're just changing the end user. So if I could call Kevin Moore up, please?
Could I ask a question real quick about that before John I mean, I'm not sure that that's, John, when I look at this application and I read the stipulation letter from Mr. Moore, this is not use specific, it is site plan specific.
Exactly.
No, it does not specify that it's a drugstore use only. The stipulation letter from Mr. Moore from the original zoning was denied and went to court, and the settlement letter and the agenda item for that includes a stipulation letter dated December 8th, 2003 from Mr. Moore. And one of the items says that it is site plan specific. It does not say use specific. The only thing that potentially would be being considered today would be the sign package, because that sign package is specified, let me find it. It says, it addresses the sign package as meeting the Eckert standard. So the only thing that's changing is the sign package. It's not use specific.
Right.
If you look at John Moore's letter dated December 8th, 2003, page number 3, paragraph 4, you know, it's clear to me that the meaning of that first sentence is it's going to be used as an Eckert's drugstore.
Well, that may be true, but the board didn't approve it for that use only.
It's not specifically called out where the board makes their motion minutes, but in this letter, it's specific for an Eckert's drugstore, and that's how we've interpreted it.
Yeah, but we have letters all the time that, I mean, till all day today, we've had letters that said it's going to be used for this, used for that. But in the past, when the board is specifying that use only, it says that use only. These letters with these paragraphs are not stipulations. They're descriptive paragraphs saying what the property is being used for. I don't see in here where it says use specific. The only thing, like I said, the only thing in here that is specific to an Eckert's is the signs. It says, number 7 says signage other than building signage for the proposed development shall be grand-based monument style, limits it to 2, and then number 8 says the finished materials and colors for all signage shall be compatible with the Eckert's building design. That is the only thing that references Eckert's drugstore. It's not use specific. The site plan is not changing. The only thing that's changing is the signs.
And the staff would respectfully disagree, Commissioner Ott. You know, we took it that it was use specific for an Eckert's drugstore.
No, I agree with Commissioner Ott. It would be in the stipulation, but it's not. So
you're taking a descriptive paragraph and making a stipulation as being use specific, and it is not. It's site plan.
It's not. But we get your point. Commissioner Burrow, you had a comment?
Yes.
I just want to make sure, I'll get back to you here in a second.
Okay.
'Cause I know you want to call Mr. Moore.
No, I have I have a question. Off of Commissioner Ott's comment regarding the signage. When it changed from an Eckert to a Rite Aid, did it come back in for another business item or a rezoning?
No, it did not.
And it should have.
It probably should have.
Right, it
Well,
should have
there
for
you go.
that. But not, I mean, it's, well, you know what I think.
Yeah, thank you.
When it was deleted to LRC from
Correct.
R20,
That's,
when it was originally zoned.
that's right.
And, so there's our question. If it's not specific to this use, then is a Dollar Tree permitted in LRC?
Yes, it is.
So that just goes back to the original question about the sign and only the sign. That's the issue at hand here, the sign,
Well, he's disagreeing.
nothing more. Well, fine, thank you. We'll take his opinion under advisement. But the issue here, the OB was for about the sign. We're not here to do a rezoning.
This is not a zoning hearing.
That's correct. And the issue before us is the sign. They just want to change the sign. So, Commissioner Campbell, you wanted to invite Commissioner, Mr. Moore back up to the podium?
Yes, please. Mr. Moore, if you could just clarify for the neighbors, what are the hours of operation going to be? I know we have hours of operation in the existing stipulation letter. Does Dollar Tree intend to change those hours of operation?
I do not. The typical is from our typical business hours. You usually see they close between 8 and 10 p.m. In this one, we have existing hours that limit dumpster pickups as well as that limit deliveries. And those are existing stipulations that will not change.
That they will remain in place?
That's correct.
Okay. And then also, has your applicant, I know you covered this in your presentation, but just again to clarify, has your applicant done their due diligence to see if another drugstore could come into this location?
Yes, the owner has done that due diligence and made that determination.
Okay, great, thank you. And then also, again, the current landscaping is not being maintained. Will they start mowing the yard
Immediately.
immediately? And then also for clarification, the landscape, the R20 landscape strip that surrounds the site, that will remain undisturbed, correct?
That's correct. That's a R20 buffer that was done at the time as part of the settlement to make sure that you didn't have a creep of non-transitional zoning.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Brown.
There was mention about removing the drive-through. Is that a step that it will be?
Yeah,
I didn't know if it was in his letter or.
It's not in a current letter, but there's a drive-through canopy that's a brick canopy. It will remain, but they will no longer have an active drive-through window.
A window, okay.
Okay, so with that, I'm ready to make my motion.
Floor is yours.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion to approve OB 10, subject to the following, in addition to the existing stipulations that are already in place. 1, there will be no outside merchandise for sale, no outside storage or sale of seasonal items, no hanging banners, no internally lit signage, no electronic signage, no exterior modifications to the building unless approved by the district commissioner. The existing drive-through shall not be utilized. And then landscaping to remain unless changes approved by the district commissioner.
Okay, we have a second?
Yes,
Any other
just
discussion,
yeah,
Commissioner
just a
Cupid?
clarification. With respect to the conversation about what we're doing here today, I would just ask that we have a pretty clear policy statement about specific use and specific user. I know I've added that stipulation in some of my zonings, but I had concern about this other business item, and I'm glad that we resolved it the way that we did, but it may not be clear, because to me, this opens up Pandora's box. If we were to say that a letter would indicate that that zoning is specific to that end user. So I would just ask that we do something so that it's clear from this point forward that there needs to be a very specific zoning condition that specifies that it's an end use or end user. So it's just clear to the whole board.
I agree with Commissioner Cupid, and just for the opposition to understand why I'm making a deal out of this. This case was originally heard in July of 2003, and it was denied. And the applicant appealed, and the courts kicked it back and said that well, they didn't kick it back. What happened was there was a settlement of litigation, which is basically in lieu of the lawsuit. And so in the settlement of litigation, the board has to be very exact, because that settlement obligation got rid of a lawsuit. And so when we read the stipulations that were part of the minutes, and then you read, and one of those stipulations references the December 8th letter, and in that December 8th letter, it has very specific conditions. And since this is a settlement of a lawsuit, the board has to follow exactly what the letter says. And whether or not it was supposed to be just a drugstore or not, that's not what it says. And I think Commissioner Cooper is right in that stipulation letters, the attorneys and commissioners all need to make sure if indeed is it a specific use. And you heard me earlier today that the Planning Commission on one of my cases on consent had listed as a specific use, and I took that away. And so I think it's very important that that you just understand that that's why I think the board has to go in the direction it's going.
Any other discussion? Call the question.
Sorry, John, did you want it?
And I do have one question about one thing, Commissioner Gamble's motion. She stated no internally lit signage.
External.
Oh, external?
I did say internally lit.
Because the signs on the exterior of the building have lights inside the channel letters.
Outline the letters on the sign, says dollar sign or Dollar Tree. It's backlit.
Okay.
The logo is backlit on the outside. That's what you're saying. So
Yeah,
at
there's
night,
lights
people,
inside the sign that make it green
Right.
when it's on at night. On all the signs, I think they're,
The way you worded it, the sign that they would have, any sign that has lights internal to it is an externally lit. I mean, this light is coming out versus a gooseneck light, which would shine on it and not go out. So what John's asking is, what are you excluding?
Can we call Kevin Moore up, please?
I took your stipulation to mean that internally lit, meaning the light coming out of the sign as opposed to light shining up on the sign. That's how I understood your stipulation.
Okay,
It was internally lit signage before, but they're having to replace all the signage, so if that's a stipulation that the commissioner's making, then
okay. I'm
that's how we
agreeable.
understand it.
Okay, I'm agreeable to that, John.
okay, I've called the question. Passes 5-0.
thank you.
Thank you, and with that, we're adjourned.